I think that I like the presence of people just coming into queer spaces to manufacture absolutely like illogical discourses. It's been there the whole time, right? And then like, this is what I was saying about the like straight women like identifying as like political lesbians and then coming into like a lesbian space to be like, lesbians can't like dick, therefore you can't use dildos. It's such a like, and now we just call them TERFs. Like it's like I like I don't know, we don't just call them TERFs, like now they like politically organize around hating trans people. So it's not, you know, it's not just a name change. They it's like what's it like? It's like ramping up the brand to like
taking it to 100.
Do a new hardcore launch because they've solidified their brand principles. They're like, we know what's going on. You know what it's like? It's like Red Planet Year 2. They've got it. They've hired their Conrad. They've got the whole media strategy figured out. They got Patreon. You know, they're pushing hard on all that stuff. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we could really do with like, you know, a big think tank with lots of money, giving us lots of money in order to do what we do. But I agree for the most
Any
part.
big think tanks out there?
Yeah.
Hey, what's up?
And
we'll say anything.
And we have patreon.com/red_planet. So if you want, we can do at the end of every show like a thank you very much, George Soros and the Open Society Foundation. Our favorite sickos, the Rand Corporation, the Koch brothers. Like, thank you so much.
Learn Liberty.
Thank you, Raytheon, for this incredible opportunity.
It's Red Planet. Oh my God! Welcome to Red Planet. It's the 22nd of January. Oh, wow. Look out! We're live. Quite good there, Sophie, how you threw us all for a loop when we said we got to speak about something that we're not speaking about before the show, but we still spoke about it anyway. That was good.
What do you mean? Every cold open on Red Planet is organically the conversation we were having right before recording.
You're right. Actually.
Conrad just putting us on without telling us, without even counting us down and telling us when he's fading out the music.
I love being a candid and organic, relatable person.
Yeah. It's for real, very poggers and bass. We've got a great show for you lined up today. We're starting it within the normal way. I'm leading. I'm taking the reins today because I wasn't here last week because I was depressed. But what I want to know, what's going to make me less depressed, I know it's going to make me less depressed, is hearing what the most based thing Sophie did this week.
Wow. Let me tell you about the most based thing I did this week. You liked that,
didn't you?
I think it was pretty good. Thanks. Yeah. Well done on taking the reins. You don't usually do it. It was good.
It's like when you receive a gift that you're like not a fan of, but you don't want to hurt the friend's feelings. Yeah, no, I love it.
It was fine.
I genuinely was very impressed by Mule taking the reins. He doesn't usually do it.
I don't. I'm normally a really nice guy.
I'll be real, I was editing something in the show notes, but I will now tell you the most based thing I did this week. It's pretty based. It doesn't help anyone but me, but that doesn't mean it's not based. I wrestled and struggled with the British trans healthcare system, such as it is, healthcare system. And I should be getting some healthcare, which is not the intended outcome of the system. So this is one I'll probably like update this as this will be part one. Okay. Part one of Sophie's very based healthcare time is I've made some progress and I should be getting onto the pilot scheme that basically is like the system, how it's supposed to work. Like the system, how it's supposed to work is dog shit, but the system, how it does work for everyone is like you're promised dog shit and then you wait like 15 years and then you die. So I have gotten past that part, and now there's the dog shit. So I will update with this. Yeah, maybe.
My partner is on that dog shit, and I can tell you, it really is dog shit. Like,
So
shit.
I will say I've been like feeling like a badass hacker, sitting in my like leather trench coat, my sunglasses, fucking typing emails away and making phone calls to get onto the system. Like not to imply that I've done anything untoward. I would obviously never do that. The law is the arbiter of morality, and I respect systems and their criteria, and I would never lie on a form to get life-saving medicine. But I have felt like a bit of a hacker going through and like, you know, like getting to the next stage of things and being like, I'm in. But you know who's a cool hacker who actually has the FBI databases on his hard drive right now? Tim, what was the most base thing you did this week?
Well, I mean, I didn't release the TSA no-fly list on a pink website covered in kittens. That's pretty based.
That's pretty based.
Yeah.
That is, yeah. But no.
Wait, do you want to contextualize that, or?
Oh yeah. A young trans woman hacker hacked the TSA no-fly list. Well, like, you know, found I think it was like an unsecured database or something like that.
Yeah, it fell off the back of a lorry.
Yeah, on her website, which looks like a 2003 GeoCities thing. It's like it's very good because it's like it's nailing that aesthetic, like intentionally.
Is there music when you show up?
I don't know.
I love that shit.
It's very good.
The title of the page is like her name Maya, like Maya blog, and it like they're just like slightly misaligned. Like it's just like it's got that real crunchy web 1.0. I put the link in chat. So.
Okay, check it out.
So yeah, no, it's really good. Yeah, and just everything about it was like super funny.
She's
the pictures
23.
And everything.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Like
23 and nailing the aesthetic that she wasn't even alive for. That's amazing.
She also posted a plushie. She also posted a picture of she's holding the plushie of like the weed cat from the new Pokemon, like in front of her laptop, like just like me and the cat are just enjoying the no-fly list.
Yeah.
So good.
It's really good. And down the bottom of her site, she's got, you know, like you used to have, I can't remember what we used to call it, but it's like all the little icons of all your friends' websites that you link to, and it's all just like ACAB, Anarchy Now. Like
I love the extra ones like Slimes Now, Slugcat, Piracy Now. Yeah, they're just really cool shit.
And
I'm gonna make a note to my CIA.
Maya.crimew.gay.
Yeah, I was about to say.
I'm gonna make a note to my CIA handler, which is obviously just Conrad. If we can get her on the show, that would be based.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, I like what Chloe's saying in the chat. The whole thing about that tweet going around, like this was sculpted by a 23-year-old. What's your excuse? And it has like this classical marble sculpture. It's like, yeah, well, you know, like she.
Yeah.
Say no.
Yeah. Now I do feel like an embarrassment and a failure. Now I'll be real.
Yeah. So my actual
what did you do this week?
Based thing this week wasn't as nearly as based, but I got the ebook of Brick by Brick from HR Press, which is the book from our guest last week, Cradle Community.
Hell yeah!
So I started reading that. It's really interesting. I haven't got too far into it, but it's quite good. And I think we will probably be talking about some of the stuff that is in there in future episodes and stuff. There's definitely some ways that I think we can apply some of the stuff that they talk about into online spaces and stuff. So we'll go into that another time. But what about Kira? What was the most base thing you did this week?
Can I have two things? Can I say two things?
I mean, if they're both just that based.
They're both just so based. Well, one was immediately after the show that we did last week. So my mom was over and she's like, how was your show? And I just, you know, she's not of my political perspective, like many of our parents aren't, but she still is very, very like, she still is trying to connect with me. We're still trying to like build a relationship back up. And so like, I told her about transformative justice and like what, you know, versus restorative justice and like, and things like that. And I was talking to her about it and she like started learning. And then I'm like, you should check out Cradle Community. And she did. And now she's like, I want to get involved. I've got plenty of time. Like, can I?
That is based.
I love that.
Yeah, it was really, really cute. So like, who knows what goes with that, but like where that goes, but like, that was cool. And also it's always good to like recap what you just learned. After you learn it, like you give it a little bit of time, but then you recap it, it helps to like solidify in your head. So that was good. So the other base thing I did was just like, just actually like pursuing, you know, touching base with friends and stuff. I've been kind of going through stuff and like being able to connect with friends instead of hiding in a hole and just isolating myself and just like, like just spiraling into the void. I actually like reach out to people and they reach out to me, and like it was really, really, really nice. And that's one of my goals for this year. Neil, you okay?
Sorry, I just thought I went to clap and then I just hit my fucking mic. Sorry.
Oh, you're so sweet. So it's one of my goals for this year is to try to like have friends, like actually have friends and actually like, talk to them. And for me, I had like a couple voice chats with people and share some DMs with people. And it was like a big deal for me. So like, I'm happy about that. So that was base as well.
That fucking rocks.
Yeah. So
I would like to know, Mule.
Oh.
What base thing did you do this week?
Well, this is actually really, really cool for me because I want it, because this, not only is this a base thing that I did, but I should hope, and I hope that this reinforces what Kira Chats has said a couple of times on the show, in that I was looking after myself over the last 2 weeks because depression. And that is a radical act, actually. So yes, it was based when you did it, Kira, and it is based now when I'm doing it. Like, I have done a lot of base stuff last year and what have you. And I think that what's happened is I just got like a lot of imposter syndrome, and I'm making a new video at the moment, and a couple of the, like, I think Sophie and Kara have both seen like a preview of it, and you'll probably agree with me when I say that like it's totally different to any other video that I've made before. Like, it's all shot differently, it looks differently, it looks a lot better.
Absolutely, yeah.
And there's like a lot of me that says, you don't deserve to look like that on the internet. You don't deserve to look cool and based. And it's been a mixture of like struggling with that, and also struggling with just seasonal depression in general. January sucks. I think everybody is in agreement with this. The weather is awful. Everything is awful. Like, if you're self-employed, you got to do your taxes. I got to do my fucking taxes very soon. I hate that shit. So it's just not been great. But I've been not beating myself up over it, and I've been desperately trying to remind myself that the only reason that I feel useless is because capitalism requires us to have a use, which is to do labor. And even though the labor I'm doing is for myself, it's part of that conditioning that is turning into a really bastardized version of self-hate, like self-criticism, because it's not actually me criticizing me when I say I should be doing more, I should be doing more stuff. It's capitalism tricking me into telling me that I should be doing more stuff.
So this is why I like memorized the unemployment thing from Bewitching Revolution, because we were playing through it and I knew it was having a big impact on Nat, and I was like, I'm just going to commit this to memory because she needs to hear this, like, because she just like struggles with these feelings all the time. Like, do you want to hear it, Mule? I can recite it.
I do want to hear it. I do want to hear it.
I want to hear it too.
Under capitalism, unemployment is treated as a moral failing, but there are always more unemployed than there are empty jobs. Therefore, to not seek work is a political act, not a moral failing. It demands a future where the absence of work brings leisure, not poverty.
And it's so good.
That actually segues really well into like one of the stories we'll be talking about today. I don't know if we should jump right immediately into that right now. Okay.
Let's fucking do it.
I know it's at the end of the list, but I think it segues perfectly in there. So
I think the first thing in the news still is about demanding a future where the absence of work brings leisure, not poverty. So let's talk about France.
Yeah.
I've said before on the show that when you're researching for this show, like, one of the easiest things you can do is just Google like France protests, because those motherfuckers are always up to something. Like, they're just like
literally what I did to.
They love a good protest. Anyway, so more than 1 million people have marched in France amid strikes over a plan to raise retirement age. So potentially based plan to begin with. More than 1 million people have taken part in demonstrations across France as transport, schools, and refineries were hit by strikes in protest at Emmanuel Macron's unpopular plans to raise the retirement age by 2 years to 64. does everyone know that Emmanuel Macron is such a fucking weird guy? Like, even besides just everything, like he's a neoliberal ghoul. He really embodies that trade-off when like neoliberalism claims to be all libertarian, but it's massively authoritarian. He's also like, I don't know. I don't want to shame a guy for loving mature women, but his wife is like 30 years older than him or something, which like, I guess it's just always painful when you see something that you'd be like, good for you, but it's in the ruling class, and you're just like, you motherfuckers can just do what you fucking want.
Well, let's not forget that when, you know, women go for older men in that regard, if someone is like a lot older than them, sometimes they get called a gold digger, sometimes they get accused of exploiting people. Why should we not do that to Macron? Why should we not accuse him of being a gold digger? What if she's got a lot of money and he wants that when she dies and doesn't actually love her?
Sassy
listen, I'm sassing it out.
+7 rule on Macron.
That's right.
So anyway, so mommy lover Emmanuel Macron's unpopular plan to raise the retirement age by 2 years. It is based. That's the thing. I'm like, they always say that thing about like Ronald Reagan called his wife mommy, and I was like, that's based though. I can't hate that. Glass houses. Anyway, the interior. So he's got such a cool plan to raise the retirement age by 2 years to make everyone work themselves to death. But maybe he just likes when his older women are also girl bosses. The Interior Ministry said 1.12 million people protested nationwide on Thursday, with 80,000 taking part in the biggest rally in Paris. Trade unions said the figure was even higher. I can't imagine that. Wow, the government downplaying the figure of a union strike march? Whoa. That's so strange. Why would they do that? It's almost like they're at war. It's like the state exists to mediate class tensions in favor of the ruling class. So weird. Anyway, many primary schools closed for the day. Authorities estimated 40% of primary teachers and more than 30% of secondary teachers went on strike. Unions said participation was higher at 70% in primary schools. The 24-hour strike and protests in 200 towns and cities are the first big test for Macron since his re-election against far-right rival Marine Le Pen last spring. It's also worth noting that Le Pen, who gets a lot of attention in the media, like people are like, well, this is like France's Trump or whatever. The Trump comparison is interesting because there is actually like a third candidate besides Macron and Le Pen who has a lot more way further left policies, who Macron used like media influence and his buddies in the establishment media to like crowd out and make sure that no one would ever vote for him.
Where have we seen that before?
Right. So it's an interesting
like
comparison that they would much rather have their like milquetoast dickhead establishment figure run against a terrifying fascist so that the liberals can be scared of the fascist and have to vote for this one. How interesting. Anyway, Macron has made the pensions issue a marker of his... Sorry, every time I think of Macron, I just think of the fucking announcement he did in like... Do you remember when he was in like a gold room? Like there were people protesting in the streets over the oil prices.
That's ringing a bell.
And he just like did an announcement like from like a fully gold room, like fucking...
Like in a country that is like known for guillotining the fucking rich. It's like real fucking power move to sit in a gold room.
I am sure this will go well for me.
Oh, Mule found it.
Anyway, Macron has made the pensions issue a marker of his aim to transform France and overhaul its social model of the wealth and welfare system. He insists he will deliver his key election pledge to change the French pension system, raising the retirement age for most people from 60 to 64 from 62, and increasing the years of contributions required for a full pension. Very cool, my guy. Really nice how you've worked until you were 64, and then you were able to make an informed decision for everyone else on your experience of being 64 and still in work. Opinion polls have shown most French people oppose these proposals. I am shocked, and view them as unjust, even if many agree with a need for change. The main question for Macron and the government is whether trade unions who joined together in a rare and historic united front for the 24-hour strike will harness public anger into broader social protest movement and continue industrial action. Some high school students blockaded Lycée on Thursday morning as the government fears young people in schools and universities could lead their own protests, and they should. That would be fucking based.
That would be so based.
Veronique, 61, a teacher at a high school in the south of Paris, said, "Teaching is physically and mentally tiring. Our salaries have effectively shrunk due to inflation, and now we worry we'll get old and ill before we're able to stop work." Yeah, fucking exactly. Fucking precisely.
It's interesting because like you know, like I've seen people say like, oh, it's from 62 to 64, like that's only 2 years, right? Like that's 2 years, whatever. But like that's so big. Like when you think about it, I mean, well, when it adds up for everyone in total, it's like, okay, those are 2 more years that those people are expected to be you know, like working, paying taxes and all this kind of stuff. That's 2 more years that the government gets to hold on to the money that would come out to the pension. So they're sitting, obviously, you know, like the government will sit on this money, invest it, you know, like in New Zealand, they like fucking trade it like it's fucking, you know, like in stocks and stuff like that. But when you add it up, it's in the story right on the bottom, it's like, and also extending the period
here too, by the way, when the financial crash hit in the UK and we had like Northern Rock, for instance, and other big chains like of banks like disappearing, like pensions disappearing was a huge thing because they had been trading
they're gambling with the money. But so yeah, and obviously the other 2 years you're still paying into your pension fund over that time as well. So it ends up being about, what is it? It's in pounds, it's 15.5 billion per year, and in euros, it's 17.7 billion. So and they're wanting to do that so they can eventually make the system kind of like, you know, like their system break even. And it's like this like ridiculous thing where it's kind of like, you know, like under a, you know, a socialist system or whatever, like these things would exist to, like, not for, you know, to break even or to make profit or anything like that. They would exist for the benefit of the people or whatever. But you know, like this is them kind of like treating it like a business under the current economic system or whatever. But there's a million other ways that governments can make money from all of these kind of things. But isn't it funny that they always choose the way to recoup money that that puts the harm onto the working class, you know? Like
like with inflation, and they think that like austerity will be the solution to inflation, and it's like if you raise like the tax on the richest by this much, I'm not even being a radical commie with this one, this much, it would solve the whole problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's happening in so many of these stories that we've been covering over the last, like, you know, year or so of you know, the cost of living crisis. It's happening over here at the moment, like where our government has like engineered a recession, you know, which they've been very open about. And it's like the other, you know, like a lot of economists have been talking about it, and it's like, well, okay, the other thing was that you could tax corporate profits like even just a little bit more, you know. And it's like, no, we can't do that. We absolutely cannot do that. So sucks to be us, I guess.
Speaking of France, I did this is quite scatterbrained, but I have a suggestion that I want to say on air for a Red Planet viewing in the Discord. There's a fantastic French film called Athena, and it's incredibly based. And it's just basically like this housing project, like this big brutalist housing project, which is like essentially the residents turn it into a fortress because they are like fighting the state, and it's just open class warfare against the state. Like the opening of the movie is them busting into a police station and just wrecking the place up and like getting everyone's arrest records and just like burning them. And then like, here's the thing: if any of this were happening in the UK, it would not be based because that would be against the law. But I don't know the law in France, so all of this is incredibly based.
I'm just assuming that everyone is acting, you know, like in accordance with the law.
I mean, I assume. I'm not a French legal expert. You're expecting too much of me. But like it's just like this working class community in the like housing project just going to like open warfare against the police because the kind of leader of it, like his little brother's just been killed by the cops, and then it just like it basically just sparks nationwide protest. Is like revolution really is like the plot of the film. It's a very fucking based film. We should check it out. It would be good. I would enjoy that. I just also remembered a piece of news that we don't have in the rotation, but maybe Tim and we could chat about this for a sec. Ardern resigned. What's the deal with that, Tim?
So she just a couple days ago, out of nowhere, said that she was going to resign by February the 7th. There was no, like, I mean, there was like a couple shoo-ins that people had. They were like, okay, it's probably going to be like Grant Robertson, Michael Wood, or Chris Hipkins. Grant Robertson was like the one that I probably called to do it, because he's kind of like known as like the economy guy. And, you know, they've been, for the last few years, Labour have been doing that kind of like, well, I mean, they have been doing the economy thing, but one of the kind of the conservative criticism of them is that, oh no, the COVID response has ruined our economy, you know? So I figured they were going to get Grant Robertson in to kind of, be the money guy or whatever, but he actually he like said that he wasn't interested. He withdrew his nomination.
And but a lot of people are saying that it's gonna like go to national in the general election then, because like
it could. So the tactic of a leader stepping down before an election is like a common thing in kind of electoral politics, where it's like, instead of stepping down at the election, you step down a little bit beforehand so that people get time to know the new leader. Because if you introduce a new leader at the time of the election, you always lose, because everyone's like, I don't know this guy, but I'll vote
more or
for
less what the Tories have been doing for the last decade.
So they've got Chris Hipkins in, who's kind of a munter. I mean, all Labour MPs are munters, but like the most recent thing he was in the media for was defending cops for just like, for no reason at all, just filming young Maori and Pacifica children, because it's statistically likely that they may commit a crime at some point, so it's good to have them on record, like fully just pre-criming them. Like just profiling them, being like, okay, these 14 and 15-year-olds might do a crime one day, so we should have, we should have photos and videos of them, which is fucking.
Hey man, I've taken the coolest technological thing from hit film Minority Report. Oh, the screens where you gesture around and it flies around like a hologram. No man, the other technological thing. You know which one? The coolest one, the best bit. Did you see the BBC article that was like, can women really have it all? Like announcing resigning is like, I would like to take the opportunity in future Red Planet news sections to highlight any men who have quit anything and ask the question, can men have it all?
So people were saying like, and there were these articles coming out like being like a man leader would never have stepped down. But so John Key, who was in charge,
that's a lie.
Like before her,
literally the biggest load of shit I've ever heard in my life.
So he stepped down in the exact same way, and he did the same thing. And so people then criticized it, were like, well, they wouldn't do it like she did. Like they
womanly, do it like being a woman.
They wouldn't say it the way that she did or whatever.
So
but
ridiculous.
Her speech like legitimately directly quoted him and said the exact same thing that he said, which was like kind of like a funny troll from her part. But it was like, she said like there's no gas left in the tank or whatever, which is just what he said, and it's like a very like Kiwi expression or whatever. But it's hilarious. And I mean, it's like, I don't I'm not a Labour fan. I think that I don't think that the Labour Party in general, or or the National Party or anything, are very like, I have a huge laundry list of problems with them or whatever like that. But the criticism and the kind of like, I guess like the harassment that she has been more than any other prime minister we've had. They've even had to say that she is like, like how when someone's been a prime minister or president or whatever, they kind of have like a ongoing security detail for a little while or whatever like that. And they're basically just like, like what we have to do for her is going to be like more than we've ever had to do for anyone in New Zealand. Because people are like, like, like just a wild amount of like death threats and all this kind of stuff. And, in New Zealand, it's kind of like with our prime ministers and stuff, it's like, where they live, like it's a small country, like, like you can just like go to their neighborhood and like, like obviously it's, like you can't just like walk up to their door or whatever like that. But it would be like super dangerous for someone who's well known and recognizable. If people were wanting to hurt them, it would be pretty easy to do it. So I think that it's pretty bullshit, the stuff that she's been had to go through, but also like she has pulled some bullshit herself. So like I am like sympathetic, but at the same time I'm kind of like it's politics, baby.
It's pretty much where I landed on it. It might be worth a longer look at Ardern sometime, but in the meantime, Mule has to tell us some really sad news that sucks.
I do. This sucks. You might have heard of Cop City in Atlanta, Georgia, or it's just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. In fact, oh no, is it? Yeah, Atlanta, Georgia. I might be wrong, but anyway, it's in Georgia. It's near Atlanta, right? And Cop City is basically a massive training facility that they're wanting to build, or they have built it. And it's essentially when they say training facility, we know the kind of things that cops are going to be training for here, folks. If you watch Red Planet, you know that we talk a lot about, the quote unquote migrant crisis, the fall of capitalism under the, crushing pressure of climate change. And they're basically teaching people to kill people in there. That's what they're going to be teaching them. That's what they're going to be training for. And they already killed someone. They killed Manuel Esteban Paez Terán. This guy was a young activist and, was just basically camping in tree houses along with his comrades all around Cop City. And it's just really shit because no one getting killed by police is good. Obviously, we all know that. But like, what threat was this person to anyone? What threat was he to anything in terms of like breaking the actual law in the US? But of course, we know that cops are there to protect the state. They're there to protect the state's interest, and the state's interest is cops. So, naturally someone, trying to prevent, cops from I don't know, training and stuff is going to be a target for the state. So it says here that the police apparently found Doubt in a tent in the South River Forest, southeast of Atlanta, taking part in a protest now in its second year. Oh, sorry, I've missed something here. Oh, taking part in a protest now in its second year against plans to build a 90 million police and fire department training facility on land, and separately a film studio where I imagine they'll be filming propaganda or something.
Yeah, new Steven Seagal propaganda films.
Officials say Manuel shot first at a state trooper without warning, and an officer or officers returned fire. Yeah, but it's funny.
Officials also claim that he yelled McClunky.
Yeah. It's funny how officials just say that people said things, and if you are a person with a mouth, you could say anything, can't you? But they have produced no evidence for the claim, and the trooper was described as stable and in hospital on Thursday. The GBI, which operates under Republican Governor Brian Kemp's orders, has released scant information, and on Thursday night told The Guardian that no body cam footage of the shooting exists. Funny that, isn't it, Chad? At least strange. It's odd, just odd that isn't there. At least half a dozen other protesters who were in the forest at the time have communicated to other activists that one single series of shots could be heard. They believe the state trooper could have been shot by another officer or by his own firearm.
It wasn't like
it wouldn't be the first time,
and then return fire or anything like that. It was like one series of
exactly. Most of the residents in neighborhoods around the forest are black, and municipal planning has neglected the area for decades. The plans to preserve the forest and make it a historical public amenity were adopted in 2017 as part of Atlanta's city charter. So this is not just Stop Cop City in terms of like stop cops, which is a great cause, but it's also protect the fucking forest, man. This is an area of natural beauty. We're going through a climate crisis at the moment. People in places like Georgia absolutely feel this, everywhere, every single kind of state that's just like, has bad weather in general, sort of like extreme weather is seeing that amplified, by a million. So of course,
it's also just a space that like in a massively impoverished community you get to like enjoy a natural space, and they want to just fucking tear it down to build a theme park for fucking cops to practice murdering people in.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
So what else we got here? Most of the residents, So the Atlanta City Council wound up approving the training center, and that's what's led to the to the protests. A series of editorials and news stories lambasting the activists began in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the area's largest daily paper. At least a dozen articles in the last year plus failed to mention that Alex Taylor, the CEO of the paper's owner, Cox Enterprises, was also raising funds on behalf of the Atlanta Police Foundation, the main agency behind the training center.
What a coincidence.
Isn't it funny how that happened, and it's definitely not related whatsoever? What are you talking about, chat?
Definitely not to this next point. Like, I think this might be unrelated.
This next point is absolutely unrelated. It says, at some point, Kemp and other civic leaders began referring to the protesters as terrorists in response to acts of vandalism, literally vandalism, such as burning construction vehicles or spray painting corporate offices linked to the project.
That's the thing, right? It's like, and it's like, as soon as they become like terrorists or whatever, it's like, it's permissible to do just like whatever, right? Like,
this is it. This is it. This is where you become the wretched, right?
Yeah, this is something that people don't know about, but like after the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, the expansion of the security state in America, like people think that it was just targeting Muslims because there was this massive Islamophobia, but it wasn't. Climate activists were enemy literally number fucking one, and cops tailing and surveilling and killing climate activists has been like a massive thing in the last 20 years because they know the climate crisis is the shit that people are like gonna be the most riled up about, and it's gonna cause a fucking revolution in their country. They know it's gonna happen. Sorry,
No.
We got some news to report. We got to report some news.
No. Honestly, Sophie, I think that's really relevant because one of the sources for this information is The Guardian. The Guardian can be fucking annoying at the best of times. But relating to what you just said, Sophie, The Guardian is claiming that this is the only instance of environmental activists being killed in the US.
And
it's like, no, it isn't. Like, what are you on about? Like,
well, that was like what I thought, right? It's like, is this like, so is that a on the books kind of thing? Like, like I imagine that it's happened and they'll just be like, oh no, that was, like this one, they'll be like, that wasn't an activist killed. Or they'll just be like, no, that was actually he was killed because he attacked an officer. It has nothing to do with him being, whatever.
We have a couple more stories still, and our guest is on the way, so we should. Anything else, Mule, we got to say about this one before we?
That's pretty much it. But don't forget, this guy's name, Manuel Esteban Paez Terán. Rest in peace, dude.
I do think this note at the end is worthwhile. Killings of environmental activists by the state are depressingly common in other countries like Brazil, Honduras, Nigeria, said Woodhouse. Woodhouse is I've lost my place in the notes, but this has never happened in the US. It's just like, nah.
There's also a little bit here as well. Like, so they started calling them terrorists or whatever for spray painting and shit. But since 14th of December, they've stepped up the raids on, like the little encampment, and half a dozen of these protesters, these defenders, have been arrested and charged with domestic terrorism. It's like not just that they're calling them terrorists, they're charging them with domestic terrorism.
For defending the forest.
Yeah, which is huge. Like that's fucked up. But anyway, the next one we've got here, over in the UK, we've got the Tory government about to destroy the UK over trans rights. So
this one's question mark?
Yeah. It's like, okay, like these transes are so powerful, right? Like so I mean, I'm not like super familiar with like the UK justice system, but I'll read it as I understand it, and
I'll fill you in if you're getting anything wrong.
Okay, so Westminster. So Westminster is like your parliament, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
UK as a whole parliament, English parliament. Yeah.
Westminster is used as metonymy for the government.
Okay, yeah. Westminster is attempting to block the new law in Scotland that would make it easier for trans people to change their gender officially in the eyes of the government. So this is what we were talking about the other week with like the self-ID thing. So
and what's crucial here is that like Westminster is, as opposed to the Scottish Parliament, who are supposed to be devolved, like Westminster is not supposed to tell Scotland what to do, and Scotland passed the bill, and now Westminster is like trying to block it, and it's like that is just a violation of the basic agreement.
Yeah, so that's like a condition of Scotland being part of the UK, right? Is that they're like, well, we'll be part of the UK, but we're going to make our own laws and stuff, and you're not allowed to, get it. So, Yeah, so Rishi Sunak is bowed to pressure from rebel Tories who claim that the turf line of concerns for women and children's safety has merit, which we know it doesn't. The UK Prime Minister has triggered Section 35, meaning that Westminster is now able to bar the new law, drawing vast criticism from LGBTQIA+ organizations such as Stonewall, political pundits, and politicians alike. The biggest thing to come out of this is the defiance that Scotland have towards Westminster and the Union in general. The presence of the Scottish Parliament should mean devolved power in the Union for Scotland itself. But when English politicians have the right to block those laws, the only answer for Scotland, for many, is independence. So this is the thing, right? It's like, what's the point in being part of the whole Union if whenever if they want to do something, that then, you know, Westminster just goes, nah. You know,
no, but
so I mean, it's like for them, it's like
UK government. The UK government has an atrocious history with like regarding Scottish independence because, like, Nicola Sturgeon. This is a brief thing. Nicola Sturgeon was traveling to other countries to negotiate the possibility of trade between Scotland and those countries, and she wanted to do that. And the UK Prime Minister at the time, whichever fucking carousel of Tory ghoul, like garbage people it was, like. Wouldn't let her have a security detail for her trip. And it's like, that's obviously like making the trip infeasible. So it's like they do whatever they can to like fuck the possibility of Scottish independence. Yeah,
totally. So according to multiple news sources, the majority of Scottish people support independence now after this latest infraction on devolution rights. Independence for Scotland would likely mean the end of the UK as we know it in many ways, and would possibly inspire Northern Ireland and Wales to secede from the unions themselves. Also,
and maybe even the North and London, who knows?
what was the Star Trek thing? The Irish reunification?
The Irish unification of 2024. It's on the way. It's literally on the way.
Yeah,
it's coming next year.
Yeah,
let's go.
So as they too have devolved parliaments that may be seen to be able to be blocked from achieving the will of the people by Westminster. So the same thing for them. Like, why would they be part of the agreement if they're just going to get pushed around? So trans people and their allies showed up in force to show their fury at this latest decision all over the UK, in Glasgow, Edinburgh, Nottingham, and many other cities up and down the country.
That is how all those words are said, Tim. Thank you so much.
I love Nottingham.
Exactly how all of those words are said. So this was cool. Like there was a protest. Like
I don't know if you're making fun of me or if I actually did that right. Like,
no, you didn't get it right. Tim fucked it up.
Like there was a protest like across the street from Downing Street, and like I saw a little bit of it, and like some friends of mine were there, and someone I know had a like sorry, I'm mixing people up. There was someone there with a sign that just said like, "We're not dead yet, you fucks." Right. But like even like for incredibly spontaneous protests, like they're like the one that was across from Downing Street was probably nearly as big or as big as like ones that I have spoken at and have been like planned for months in advance before. Like it was like people are fucking mad, and like there's probably going to be a bunch more of them. So this might be a news story that's coming up again next week or whatever, because this is all very new.
Tim, right. I will secede to that. I cannot pronounce that. You're right. I am wrong, and you were right. That's how Nottingham. That's how Nottingham has always been pronounced. Actually, it's
Nottingham? Is that Nottingham? Like the sheriff of Nottingham? Nottingham. Oh,
yeah. You're not even supposed to say the T's. It's just
and Glasgow.
Like an apostrophe. Yeah.
It's an apostrophe. Yeah. Nottingham.
No, there you go. Okay. You got it.
One more story. 5 minutes.
There's one more story. Kara, tell us about the
story. It's mine.
Let Kara tell a story.
Okay. Right now. Right now, there are mass layoffs. Yeah, right now, this very second, there are mass layoffs in the tech industry, like huge layoffs. So like Google, Amazon, let me see, Google, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft. And by the way, the company that controls Google for like the hiring is, I think, called like Alphabet or something. So if you see that, that means Google. Microsoft, Twitter, because Elon and shit. Like a lot of companies. So you should know that there was like a big hiring bubble before, but now since 2022, they've been starting to like lay off people, and they just laid off a ton of people. They just fired over 50,000 people
Yeah.
From just 4 Silicon Valley's largest companies.
Yeah, this is especially crazy. Like like I've worked in the tech industry. I worked in like as a programmer for about 6 years, and like you would think after the .com bubble that they would realize that like it's not like the tech industry is not recession proof and the internet does not exist like completely separate of the real world.
Industry.
It's crazy. Like it's so arrogant. Yeah, like they're
like no, that was those are those people. We're different.
It's like
we're the future.
shit is hard for people right now, and these companies are shrinking like so many other companies. But like I don't know if anyone saw the video from like Mark Zuckerberg announcing the layoffs at Meta or fucking Facebook, whatever. And it was just like it's so obviously because he thought that like they could just expand forever and do whatever fucking bullshit in a VR universe.
What would give him that idea? I wonder what would give him that idea.
Exactly right, because they've just had like investor money thrown at them their entire lives. Like
that's the entire model of capitalism is just endless growth with no like awareness of how absurd that is, like the absurdity of it. Anyways,
Silicon Valley guys, honestly.
Yeah, so the layoffs are still seem to be going on, so get ready for more layoffs to continue. And there's this tweet that I saw, which was Google New York City employees who arrived at the office early this morning stood in a line to test their badges. If the light turned red, it meant you had been laid off. If green, you were safe, because they sent overnight an email to people. Oh, by the way, you're fired. So if you just showed up at work to work early, you'd like, didn't do the above and beyond. I'm a good employee. Check my email at like 5 a.m. Like, because no one, like, people don't do that. It's very reasonable not to. You would have had to like wait in this line and just like see. It's like a chopping block.
Wow, like I mean, I guess it'd be like embarrassing for a lot of people, right? It's like you got to find out what's up, but like, I also imagine it just kind of ending up being like this kind of like just super ridiculous. Kind of like like almost like Squid Game kind of moment where you're all just kind of like what are we doing?
I heard about this yesterday from this girl I was hanging out with, and I said to her, like, if I was in that line and my pass went green, I would just be looking at my colleagues and being like, hey, does anyone want to smash the fuck out of the offices, right? Like anyone whose pass went red, do you want in, and do you want to just kick the shit out of like all the like like it's got to be so radicalizing.
What we were saying earlier about the people that like were burning the arrest records and stuff like that, it would be amazing just to be like, hey, should we just go in and should we just like turn all the servers off or so, just like should we just go in and just
pulling the comically big plug that is all of Google.
We'll just start printing out the everyone's passwords folder.
It should be said that this is all hyperbole. This is all just us just having fun.
We don't encourage
rabble. No, we absolutely do not encourage any of this here at Red
No
Planet.
one should break the law.
No. One more thing about the story before we bring our guest on. The implications for immigrants is really important here, because nearly 80% of the laid off tech workers, while they land new jobs within the 3 months beginning their search, that's a really long time. By the way, some people never do, and that's after like busting your ass in this market. And that's an estimation. Like we don't actually know what's going to happen, right? But 3 months is a long time for many tech workers, not just for money, but because a lot of them rely on having a job here so they can maintain their presence in the country. And like a lot of these workers are on H-1B visas, and they have a very short amount of time to be able to get another job. And a lot of them establish like lives here. They never expected.
It's really scary.
It's really scary. They have children.
The same thing that happened with Twitter when
They've
Elon like got rid of everyone and stuff like that. There was so many.
I think
a lot of these workers were on Twitter like, "Please help me, my family. Like, we're gonna get kicked out of the country because fucking Elon decided he's having a like crisis. That's why."
I think people can understand this relationship between like state and capital a bit better when it's like smaller states, because sometimes America makes itself like completely invisible to people. But like there are these weird posters that have been popping up around London that just say like, have you been fired by Twitter or Google? Move to Vilnius, like the capital of Lithuania. Like that's the poster, and it's got like a QR code to scan. And it's like what's happening is that like the Lithuanian government are trying to put money into like a tech industry, and they're trying to like snatch up people who just lost their jobs in the UK. And like, but like that's exactly what had happened with like the reason Silicon Valley exists is because like the American government was like, we want to put money through this into like inflating this industry. And
Right.
Is that
Listen,
cool?
there is not an intro to this guest, so I'm going to ad lib one. We always talk on Red Planet about how we need to be thinking past the boundaries of capitalism. We need to be thinking about what life will be like after capitalism has eaten itself. And there are some people in this world who are already kind of just like living that life. And my good friend Dan from Greater Manchester Tenants Union and also the Gaskell Garden Project is one of those guys. And he's going to be talking to us today about basically what him and his organization do, because food is one of the most important things to take back control of when it comes to seizing power for the people. That's all I got. I did as good as I can. There it is. Dan, how's it going? Welcome in, dude.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
How are you
How's it
doing?
going? Nice to see you all. Thank you very much for having us.
You're very welcome. Why don't you start off by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about Gaskell Garden Project?
Absolutely. So my name's Daniel. I'm one of the founders of Gaskell Garden Project. I actually have another one of our directors here. This is Tommy.
Hi, Tommy.
I brought my own special guest onto the show. We actually live together, so it's quite a close-knit community. So essentially what we are a permaculture-based project. We use that term kind of loosely, based in Manchester, Northwest. We're comprised of 3 different elements. We have 3 permaculture gardens, which we run at the moment, local community growing spaces. We have a pop-up pastry-field cafe. Then we have a surplus food project, and kind of all 3 of those things kind of interrelate to each other quite specifically, really, in a way. It's all kind of loosely based on the principles of earth care, people care, and fair share. So you have the gardens are earth care, the cafe is the place for them to meet, that's the people care. Then the surplus is I suppose the fair and equal distribution of resource, free and equal access to resources kind of like hits that kind of point with it. So yeah, that's kind of what we are.
Excellent. And in terms of what it means by, because there's so many questions to ask here, because the way I introduced you was that yous are living outside of capitalism while capitalism still exists, right? And that's me and you spoke about this down in person, kind of like we have to start thinking about this as leftists. We really have to start thinking about, okay, we know that capitalism's bad. We know that there are things to do to make capitalism less painful for people who are currently in it. But what is the next step? And so in terms of your organization with the surplus food project, that was the most sort of interesting thing to me, because so can I just get this straight, because I might have got this completely wrong, but like you just offer food anyway to people who need it, don't you? Like you have like a program for that or something, or have I got that wrong?
No, kind of. I mean, because we're kind of this like member-led organization, it can be quite chaotic and quite incoherent at times, but the kind of terms of the surplus food project, as in the equal access to resource, it's based, we love principles of free. We do everything in principles of free. And the principles for the surplus project is, it's not really about the food. No, well, we're not a food poverty project, it's a food waste project. And that point's really important to get clear. People not being able to have food to eat, that's a governmental problem. That shouldn't be happening. And in no kind of way do we ever see ourselves as in any way trying to like keep that kind of movement going. Instead, what it is that there's a huge amount of resource which has been wasted by the capitalist system. And it's how do we take that waste resource and turn it into something more useful for us, which gives us an opportunity to organize and to then challenge with it. So the principles of the surplus project is we use the food to, first of all, create conversations. The whole project's about creating conversations. The food is just the mechanism in which we create those conversations through. The second principle is to create alternative pathways to food. So whatever that kind of be. So, kind of buying from supermarket or queuing up at a food bank, or, things like this, like Victorian style kind of models of access to food. We're not very interested in that. We're interested in people being able to find their own different kind of ways to it and the ways they want to do it. Then the third part has to be food sovereignty. There has to be the ability for people to access resources, whether it be food. We consider resources to be connection, love, friendship, skills, education. These are all resources too. The food is just the mechanism in which we do it. So that's how it interrelates into the garden, you see. Okay.
This is already incredibly based.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Really cool.
It's really interesting. So you kind of, for what we do, you can request food from us, but there has to be kind of some kind of collaboration. There has to be some kind of difference to it. So I mean, at the moment, for example, we support Greater Manchester Tenants Union with the things we do in the community. So you're getting food to people, and you're attracting people in to train up on housing rights and have to challenge the housing system. But the attraction is you get to sit around and eat some food with it. Or traditionally, it's people seeking refuge we work with as well. But there's no good just dropping them food to eat for a day. You know, it's not really necessarily food that they want to have. They want to have interaction. They want to come down and be in a space. They want to be able to organize themselves in that kind of way. So yeah. Anyone can have the food, but you know, you got to do it in a cool way.
I feel like there's a question that we should get in early is like, if people don't know about the concept of permaculture, can you explain it and also explain how it relates to what you are doing?
Well, I mean, I think the fun thing for us about the term permaculture is that some people say to us, oh, you know, what does that mean? It's not very accessible to understand what it is. But actually, that's our greatest success, is really knowing what we're doing. Because we've been able to kind of live in the capitalist city and do what we want, but people don't really challenge us because it's quite a non-divisive term. You know, if we said we were an anti-capitalist or communist organization or anarchist, we wouldn't have been able to make the kind of headway that we have. Instead, we say we're permaculturists and no one knows what it is, so they just leave us be.
It's commie shit. Okay.
We're doing this all from a gardening perspective, though. So our base kind of is within Plattfields Park in Manchester. So our main garden site, the Spiral Garden, is within a community park that we all meet up at the weekends in, and we don't currently have any indoor space there. So we're all kind of, and so the more get the permaculture aspect in, we all look at stuff in the garden. So we all met through the garden. That was the primary project initially, which is where the Gaskell Garden Project comes from. And we all met through an interest in permaculture, but also living in a city, so lacking a lot of access to green space, but also friends, people who wanted to be in the same networks as, to like grow skills, but then to get to know about like a local group of people, all a similar age, all volunteer based, in a local park that you can turn up and help volunteer. And it's good because at first it's just understanding the network between plants and growing, and permaculture is trying to use everything in a symbiotic way, like in nature's way, how a forest grows, and we're just trying to replicate that within a garden. But then it makes you look at everything outside the garden differently. And we were food producers, so when we didn't have food to produce, we were looking around, seeing the waste that supermarkets were making. And then the project developed with a surplus project, that we got to a point when we were unbagging vegetables at the supermarket to leave the plastic waste with them. So then we could go and distribute plastic-free veg, I mean, without having to dispose of it. And then if any veg is gone off, we can take it to the compost at the garden. So we don't throw away anything, and everything that we get, our main priority is to distribute it then, which is another side to the surplus project. Like, how do you move the food? And you have to move it quickly, and some of the food isn't ideal. So to give you an idea, you could have really good stuff from like some meat sometimes, or fresh vegetables and produce, but then you could have boxes of coleslaw and mashed potato and like processed foods that then aren't great to distribute out. And you have to, this has only come through like years of doing the project, that you have like a hierarchy of food, I would say, and like bread's something that is just day to day, get given massive volumes of, so you don't take that as seriously, or you don't take as much of it, or you offer it out to other projects as well. So even when we've had a surplus of surplus, we've got in touch with other community groups, 0161 groups like that, and asked them, would they like to take the surplus that we've had, or, oh, we can't do this supermarket. And again, a network which is created through the garden, because it's our front, as we'd say. We are the gas, like everyone knows us through the space and walking past it in the park and the growing, and through doing the garden and having all the vegetables. We didn't sell the produce. We only ever gave it to volunteers who grew it, or we took it, and we had our page of field meal at a local that was local.
So what would permaculture be then?
Oh, hang on, just before you go on, Tommy, because you're an unexpected guest, more than welcome, obviously, because you're part of Gaskell Garden Project, but we want to make sure that we properly present you who you are. We know your name's Tommy, but what's your pronouns, friend?
Probably, yeah, he, him, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, sweet, no worries. But yeah, as Dan was saying, what would you say permaculture is for people who might not know it?
I mean, technically, the term stands for permanent agriculture. So it's essentially a process of food production which is not just sustainable, but actually, progressive. It's all about creating design systems to close loop and to close waste. And I think what you're kind of getting at there is that you apply it in the garden, but you also apply it to community, you also apply it to politics, you also apply it to organizational skills as well. It's how everything interrelates together. We say that any activity that lets you take responsibility for your own existence is permaculture. And that's why we have...
Okay, very nice.
Yeah. So we don't just get
so the permaculture isn't just the food, the permaculture is the community and is the comrades and is the relationships you're building. Incredibly based.
Yeah, I love that.
But that's what makes it fundamentally different to just the community garden. You know, you go to community garden, they're great. Community gardens are fantastic, I love them. But they can be quite isolated and they can be just kind of like very centered on just one kind of thing. You normally kind of just you attract people just want a garden. Whereas the joke of us, half of us don't even like gardening. You know, that's the joke. I mean, I'm an immigration solicitor and you're a breakdown recovery van mechanic. You know, you just get attracted like all different kinds of people with it.
Yeah.
Because you can do anything as long as you abide by 3 kind of simple rules for us. You just respect each other, everyone's equal, and you have good communication. As long as you can abide by that, then you go nuts.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of I like the community garden thing is cool. Like we get that down here quite a lot, but they tend to be like they kind of get taken over by people, like a lot of kind of older people. Like you get like over here, it's almost like the garden itself can become like a tool of gentrification, where it kind of becomes this thing that like certain people will take over and then push out other people. And like there's definitely been times I've felt that way, and other people that I know have said that as well, where it's like, they thought when it was just a community garden coming in that it would be this like, like they were thinking like it might be some kind of cool permaculture thing, and then it just ends up being like like maybe like older people that have a little bit more time that are obsessed with gardening, and they just it kind of becomes their garden, And
yeah. There's like a community garden near me, but like I have no idea how I'd access it or anything. And it's all like fenced off and stuff, and like it's nice to see people doing stuff, but like it's not. It doesn't feel accessible.
Like there's a fence around it, and it's like
literally,
chicken and like like weird shit like that, So I love the idea of permaculture, and like the idea of like emulating, I guess, like natural ecosystems and stuff to kind of create things that are permanent. I think is really amazing. There's a lot of stuff like that down here. A lot of like Maori run kind of like, it's like there's like down here there's like this thing where it's like they say where it's like people look at like like there's Maori run like food forests and like initiatives from like like on Marae and stuff like that, and people be like, that's permaculture, and they're like, no, this is what we've just always done. Like it's permaculture is just kind of like a new name for just kind of just doing the thing or whatever, which I think is really interesting. And it's like not something that I personally care too much about like splitting hairs over, but I think that like the modern permaculture movement kind of does have like a huge overlap with a lot of kind of like traditional ideas over here, and like our traditional ideas about like food, like the whole like food sovereignty is like a huge thing, and even just the way of like we want to create like a symbiotic kind of like relationship with the environment, whatever. There's a couple good books. I'll dig up some books as well, and I'll link them in chat to people as well, because I know there's some good Maori ones. But I really like that. I dig the vibe.
I hadn't heard the term food sovereignty before, but I'm extremely into it.
There is a book. It's like oh, I can't remember. I'll find it and I'll put it in chat. It's like the English name is like a Maori food sovereignty handbook, and yeah,
Amazing.
It's good.
So I think like you know, the term permaculture was coined by a man called Bill Mollison. He was Australian. It's kind of like 70s, and the kind of criticism of it is that people say, well, exactly what you say. Actually, most of it's common sense, and it's actually like quite like an ancient way of production or natural farming. Then you kind of realize, well, there's a Japanese farmer called Walker who was doing the natural farming principles, which pretty much stole that from. But then you go back to the 7th century Chinese philosophy and Taoism, and you read that, you know, it's all the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Seeing something nice. The idea we probably haven't been sent into this world by supernatural being to farm it. We've probably come out of the earth the same way that a tree has or everything else has in that kind of way. So it's quite humbling. It's quite humbling kind of philosophy, really. And it's very non-dogmatic as well. I mean, I spoke to one of Bill Mollison's students in Portugal. I went out to do a few workshops, and I asked him about this, and I said, you know, you're quite passionate using the term permaculture, but, you know, should you be using it? And he says, well, the thing is, it's ancient knowledge, but what we have now is that we have modern day science and different equipment. So it's a combination of the old and new ideas combining together to create something beneficial, I suppose. So yeah, that's kind of what it is.
That rocks. And so yeah, I guess that's another thing to sort of talk about now is in terms of food sovereignty, because I've, like Sophie, never heard the word. What springs to mind as soon as you say it is food empowerment. Like that's what comes to mind. I think like, okay, so currently we have to like get jobs that we hate in order to afford food to keep us alive in this world. Wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to fucking do that? And how can people access food? Like you said, you offer people a way to access food differently. So talk us through the food sovereignty thing. What does food sovereignty mean to you, and what's your mission with food sovereignty?
Well, I think kind of like the point kind of to us is that, you know, especially things like waste, you know, especially with like food waste. I mean, you can look at it from quite a few different angles. If you look at it from like an environmentalist kind of point of view, you know, if you look at the statistics of this, you know, if food waste was a country, it'd be the world's biggest polluter. I think it's 45% of all food produced in the world is wasted. So that's almost half of everything that's being produced. And so that's creating a really interesting question, because, you know, in terms, capitalism is all based on scarcity, right? That's how you like drive prices in capitalism. Capitalism love scarcity. There's not very much of something, you charge a higher price for it. So the kind of like, you know, using the Taoist principles of, you know, yin yang, what's the opposite? What's the counterbalance to scarcity? It's surplus, all right? So what happens if you start flooding your community with resources? Will the conversations be different in that kind of way? So, you know, kind of first, you know, we'll start bringing people resources to kind of like get them kind of equipped to kind of like do things for themselves. Then they start creating their own resources. They kind of think, well, you know, are you going to still hold the same kind of opinions that you do if you're not fighting over stuff? It's really kind of interesting. But then you have to like think of the idea that what happens, say if me and Tom aren't around, or let's say we go out and have too many drinks on a Saturday night, we don't want to get out of bed on the Sunday, you know, which sometimes, not very often, but sometimes happens, then people can't access that food, so it's not good enough. And what you've got there is a power dynamic, and it's kind of, that's still reminiscent of this like Victorian food bank kind of style, that I have resource, you don't have resource, but I'm going to give you the resource because I'm benevolent and we're kind. I'm going to give you the resource, but it's still in your control.
You're right.
That's the thing that makes us kind of feel uncomfortable about it. So although that we have access to the surplus food and also have access to the production of the food, the idea is that if me and Tommy just disappeared tomorrow, would you still be able to access that without us? And that's kind of like a principle of empowerment for people, but it's also a safeguard for yourself as well, because it's a tremendous amount of pressure being in a position of responsibility where you've created a system of dependence on yourself. I mean, that's never going to be healthy in any kind of dynamic. I mean, whether that be in a personal kind of perspective or an organizational perspective as well, because otherwise what you'd be is a charity. And
yeah,
we're a bit kind of like, we're big fans of Oscar Wilde. We're not a big fan of charity models. There seems to be something a little bit strange about charities, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but it's got something to do with the fact that they have resources and they may or may not choose to share those resources.
We did literally one of the first episodes of Red Planet we did was on charity versus mutual aid. Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Literally like a year ago.
I think this question about food sovereignty is really important. I'd like to. Sorry, because of my Bluetooth headphones, I go off to piss and I can still. I'm caught up. So I just wanted to like add on to that. Yeah, I try to make sure that you can't hear me pissing. That's for the patreon.com/red_planet if you want to hear me pissing. So I wanted to add to that, like, just add to this discussion, like, can we also talk about like the sustainability of this and the vision of more people doing this? Because obviously our current food situation, like, as Mule said, right, you got to have a job, you got to have money. Like there are people who will give you food. There's a whole system figured out to get food in people's mouths, but it's all a capitalist system, and this is about doing something differently, right? Yeah. So like, how do you envision like an alternative growing, and how sustainable can it be?
I mean, what we get asked quite a lot in our workshops, so we go around and do bits and bobs. It's like we're all hell bent on this idea of small scale local growing, and what people kind of come back to us and say, but how can you possibly imagine to feed enough people this small scale growing? You know, you say, well, there's an increasing population, you'll never have enough food for this and this. But the first kind of response back to that is, well, you're wasting almost half of the food anyway, so why don't you stop with that kind of first? You know, why don't you stop that kind of waste? And the interesting thing to us, really, in particular with the surplus project, is that we're really measuring our success by how obsolete we can make ourselves. So, you know, we don't want there to be waste coming from the supermarkets. That's not the ideal. We don't want that to continue. In fact, we're making a documentary at the moment that the campaign is to try and replicate more of a French model where they actually make it a criminal offence for supermarkets to waste the food. That's kind of what we're kind of aiming for. But then you kind of think, well, then what do you do with food? And you're just going back to the supermarkets and buying it then again, aren't you? So thinking, well, hold on a minute. You know, how much can you produce yourself? And a lot of people don't really like the idea. It's not always the most popular kind of idea, because you come to the realization they're going to be eating a lot of cabbage and artichokes and chard and things like this. But yeah, at the end of the day,
that's all great food, though. I don't get it.
I know, right? You think, well, where am I going to get my Jaffa cakes from? You know, this and this. But you know, what you can at least do is take out a chunk of it. You know, and when we produce, I mean, the idea that we're doing, again, we're not producing food for people to have. We are producing food for ourselves first and foremost, but then we're creating food for ourselves with an idea to create more than we need. So we have the surplus. So the surplus should hopefully transition from surplus from supermarkets to surplus from our own production of gardens. That's what we're kind of aiming for to try and do. And obviously, if you produce your own food, I mean, what we're talking about is power and control. I mean, that's why we started doing it, is the idea that, you know, gardening or food production is a so low cost, and really that's probably why the idea why we started with that is because we didn't have any money. You just need a bit of dirt and some seeds, and it's like, you know, it's, you know, a £2 packet of seeds you can turn into, you know, 30 pumpkins. You think, oh, that's not really worth that much. Then you turn it into pumpkin soup, you know, pay as you feel model. Then you walk away with £300. And you think, hold on a minute, we've now got money which is in a member-led organization with an idea to spend on whatever we want. It's not coming from funders. So you can't get this idea that it's not just about the food, right? You're getting food, that's great. The food's not the valuable part. The valuable part is the interaction, it's the conversation and the creation of what we've regard as the other kind of resources. I mean, through the Pay As You Feel Cafe, I mean, we've financed the creation of human rights organizations in Kinshasa and all this stuff. Traditionally worked for people seeking refuge. So what we kind of did is that whilst people were doing their asylum claims, they again refused asylum claims because they've been criticized for not integrating with the community, you know, not demonstrating, you know, this X, Y, and Z, which is nonsense, yeah, because you're displaced into somewhere where you have no access to resources, there's no community center, there's nowhere for you to go. How are you supposed to learn language? How are you supposed to learn anything, right? The game was rigged. So we thought it was a bit of a fuck you to the Home Office, actually, the Gaskell Garden Project in the first instance.
Fuck yeah.
Hell yeah. They said, well, you're not integrating. We said, all right, well, we'll create somewhere that you can come and meet and kind of do some stuff. And then because they didn't have any access to any kind of finances, I mean, if you had an ongoing asylum claim, you get access to like a small bit of money per week. It used to be about £35 a week. It's a bit more, about £40 a week. So how do you travel? How do you get buses around? How do you buy nicer food? How do you buy diapers for your children? You know, all this kind of stuff. So the idea was people come down and you produce the food, which obviously has, you know, obvious benefits of gardening, you know, your exercise, your interaction, you know, touch the soil, you know, whatever. But then also you're creating this resource, which then, you know, in this case would be food. You cook it up into meals, and then you're suddenly putting money into the hands of people who the government is saying they're not allowed to have money. One I thought was really funny. I thought, you know, all the newspapers and the government saying these people aren't supposed to be here. They're not supposed to have resources, and we didn't quite agree with that. We
Yeah.
thought, love you being here.
I don't quite agree with that either. Yeah.
You know, whatever the newspaper said they couldn't have, we would provide really. And because you know, with the garden and it being, you know, the food production, we're untouchable. Even through the COVID pandemic, we even got a letter from the council saying we're key workers, and we was one.
Oh wow!
Like, you know, weren't allowed to go to work. Had to spend every day gardening, cycling our bikes around, throwing bouquets of flowers at people. You know, it's like the thing is you have control. So food, yes, okay, fantastic, but it is the control and it is the autonomy and it is the ability.
Yeah.
That's the important part of this process.
That's an interesting thing because you're talking about money a bit there, and I know a lot of people kind of think that if you can't do something that's immediately totally free of capital, then it's, you know, not doing like a leftist project or a communist project. But like and obviously, like I mean I agree with Mule's assessment of what you're doing, like that it's pushing to live outside of capitalism and it's not kind of tainted in some way or whatever, like and I think that's when people kind of have that mentality, they're often missing, like, first of all, that like not all forms of trade or even trade with money are capitalism, but like they're also missing a picture, which I think you're encapsulating really well with this thing about control, right? That like we need to get resources that currently exist within the infrastructure and the supply chains of capitalism and get those resources to be liberated, right? And if we're not, if what you're doing is not like a capitalist enterprise in any sense, then it is free from capitalism, even if there is like a thinking about like resource allocation and like using money, even, because it's like, yeah, like I say, you're just getting stuff that is currently in the system, and suddenly it and the resources and the people can be outside the system.
Well, the kind of joke is, you know, you go to the supermarket. The supermarket's like really keen these days to give you the waste food because, you know, like Sainsbury's and Aldi on their websites, on the TV adverts, it's like, yeah, we're all about the community. You know, we sort the community out. So it's like, all right, we're going to give the food, you know, the waste food to community organizations, and it makes them feel really good. And, you know, the managers are sorted out, you know, they look at better promotions and things like that. So we play on that. We even play the stores off against each other, and we say, you know, Dave down at M&S gave us twice as much as you did last week. You know, he's getting the promotion. So they can give, you know, the surplus to us, and then we'll turn that into whatever we want to turn that into, whether it be into the cafe or give it to the striking workers or take it to the refugee cafe or wherever it may be. But then from there, you're then creating the resource in the way that you want it to be. So it starts off as food. Then you turn it into whatever it is that you kind of need. So whether that be finances or skills share or just, you know, away from isolation, or whatever that may be. Then once you kind of created that resource, then this is probably the most important part. Now that you have resource, you have a better ability to organize. And so we kind of see that quite a lot of times, if you're trying to live so far outside of the capitalist system whilst also trying to challenge in it, like where is your power coming from? Because you might not need money, but you probably need like a space to sit and meet in. I mean, you might go down to the squat buildings and things like that. That's great, but you might still be isolated away from the community you're trying to work in. I mean, we work alongside the squats like quite a lot, and quite a lot of stuff we do. But the squats, like, they move, yeah. So you'll temporarily have them in one community for, you know, if you're lucky, a year, yeah. Then all of a sudden you're on the other side of Manchester. So there's kind of like, it's quite temporary kind of nature to it. So it's not necessarily in the way that you want to do it. So once you get once you start organizing, and then that's when you challenge. And that's the kind of joke. The more food the supermarket gives us, the more power it gives us to challenge them. So
Of course,
closing the loop, yeah. It's closing the loop. And
I think what you're saying about spaces as well is really important. My partner was telling me the other day something she'd read about third spaces, which is like, if there's like your home and there's where you're like supposed to be for productivity, right? Either school or work, basically, right? And then people need third spaces to exist in. And if those like, we talk about all like going to the park or whatever, and how important it is to have community centers, or like this kind of stuff comes up when you're talking about like crime. Like kids don't have somewhere to go, so they're just out on the street or whatever. But like that's really important, not just for people going away and not being up to any mischief, but like you're saying, like building something, like giving people a third space is like so important.
You want to know something horrifying is that when I worked at Starbucks as a barista, they explicitly use the terminology third space to describe themselves. And we're like, we need to make this more of a third space for people.
Yeah, that was exactly the thing I was like, Nat was reading about, was like, if people are ending up where like their only third spaces, they have to spend money to exist.
Yeah, that's what we kind of do. So the cafe space, which is the people care aspect of it, it's a pay-as-you-feel model. And about kind of 9 years ago, I was just kind of the sofa surfing around up in Newcastle, and a partner of mine at the time lived in a house where all of a sudden the guys she lived with just came home with these crates and crates of food, crates and crates. I don't know, 20 crates of potatoes, crates of carrots, and I was like, what's going on? And they say, oh, we do the Surplus Food Project. We have this pop-up pay-as-you-feel cafe, and I'd never heard of it before. I never heard of this model of pay-as-you-feel or pay-as-you-can as well. I became fascinated with it. And I was just like, why are you doing it in this way? And they said, well, it means that no one has to identify whether they have money or not money, because it's not the money that's important. It's important to get everyone in the same room. And that's what came back down to Manchester and kind of thought, hold on, this is really interesting, because when we're kind of doing events, especially with people seeking refuge, is that the people who are seeking refuge who are in the membership of our organization explicitly say, I don't want to be referred to as an asylum seeker. I don't want to be referred to as a refugee.
Yeah.
Especially at that time, there was such negative connotations, in the newspapers, as a Syrian crisis and things like this. So if you want, hold on a minute, if we're going to do like an event, or we used to put on these big kind of club night kind of things, or the cafes or whatever. And when someone comes to the door, how do you not charge them without them having to identify the fact that they shouldn't be charged? This kind of blew our minds, because even if you have like people's names written down on the list, you still identify them as being different. There's a somehow specialties on the list. But of course, there've been friends and family who weren't on the list, and how do you deal with that? Then you think, well, give someone like a token. You kind of think, oh, that's what we got given in schools when we couldn't afford stuff like that. So we thought, balls to it, just make everything pay as you feel, so anyone can just pay anything.
There's a lot of pay as you feel services in like queer community spaces. There's quite a well-known barber in London that's like pay as you feel, and like a lot of people will be like, well, if you can afford like a fancy haircut or whatever, just think of it like, you're actually paying for your haircut and someone else's, because like,
there was for years they just shut down during COVID, but in Melbourne there was like there was a group that ran 3 different restaurants called Lentil is Anything, and they were totally pay what you feel. They started in like the year 2000 or whatever, and they literally just shut down in COVID, which really sucked. But they were set up, like one of them was set up in an old it was like an abandoned convent that they got a cheap lease on, and just set up this amazing space. And it was like amazing. When I lived over there, you would go, and it was just like a donation box on the way in, and you could put in whatever. And it was like this huge mix of people from, all different kinds of backgrounds, communities and stuff. You'd be like, there'd be like refugee families and stuff, and there'd be like young kind of like, students and young punks and stuff like that. But then there would also just be like normal families, because it was, it was good food, and like people would just come and hang out, and like, it didn't like, just going there wasn't like, oh, that's where you go when you're poor, or you're like, it's rent week and you don't have much money or anything like that. It was like just like a cool place to go, especially because it was like in this old convent on the grounds, and there was like a nice garden and all this kind of thing, and it was just like a really cool place to go, and everyone from the community would be there, and it was just like there was no judgment or anything. Sometimes people would go in and throw a couple dollars in because that was all they could afford, and then like sometimes you'd come back and it was like the day after payday, so you put in a little bit extra or whatever, because just because you could. And there was no, it's not like there was someone at the front like watching you putting money in the box or anything. It was just like you just walk down the hall, put the money in the box, and you go. And it was really amazing space. They'd even have like, you know, like live musicians and stuff like that. It was just like an amazing community vibe. Really sad that it's gone now, but they did a lot of good in like 20 years. So,
yeah. You've got to think that, like, you know, how many spaces do you have where you'll have, you know, punks, students, people seeking refuge, street homeless, business people, teachers, you know, all sitting in the same space. And people say, oh, I'm so sorry, I don't really have anything to pay. And we say, well, no, the joke was, there's a trick just to get you to come and sit here and meet everyone else. You know, we don't really care about the money, you know, but in terms of like reality, you know, trying to live outside the capitalist system the best that we can. There are some things which are food and our good intentions do not cover. Things like our rents and our energy bills and things like this. And kind of the pay-as-you-feel model, the people kind of like a bit scared of it, I think, in a lot of ways. They kind of think, well, it's just, if you're making a business model and you're making a cash flow like forecast, something like that, you know, accountants hate us. You know, they say how much money you're going to make, and say, well, I don't know. It depends if they're doing it. It drives them crazy, but somehow it does kind of balance itself out. You know, kind of people with a bit of money find it a bit quirky, you know, and they come down, they like to kind of pay for it. I mean, we do 3-course meals. People normally pay about £5 for a 3-course meal. And let's face it, it's an organic vegetable that we've just harvested the same day from half a mile down the road. Yeah, it's better quality food than you're going to get, you know, in most restaurants.
Literally anywhere, yeah.
Probably anywhere, right? And that's just really funny because it means that people can have this experience, you know, without feeling nervous. I mean, I do eat in restaurants by myself, but because I'm a bit weird. But most people, you normally have to have at least one other person to go have dinner with, you know. But in these pay-as-you-feel cafes, you don't. Everyone just turns up and kind of gets involved. And if you can't pay, you know, we have a lot of regular people and they can't pay, and they say, well, you know, do you want to help collect the food, or do you want to help cook the food? Or, you know, you can clean some dish. We don't make anyone do anything, but there's an opportunity to join, you know, and that's really heavily encouraged as well. So you don't have to pay with money. We even consider just going around saying nice things about us to be contributing. You know, if you say, had a great time in that cafe down the road, you should go. You know, that is still cooperation, and that's still incredibly valuable to have. So, yeah, you just contribute whatever you can contribute, you know, and that fluctuates. You know, sometimes you can contribute more, sometimes you contribute less, but there's no kind of obligation on you, and there's no, you know, there's no contract written with us, you know. Come and go as you please. We just hope it's a nice space that you want to be in, you know.
Yeah.
Look, I trust it.
Yeah, absolutely. For those interested, I did just find the ebook that I was talking about earlier, the Maori Food Sovereignty Handbook. I'm going to pop it into the chat here. If anyone wants to check it out, it's called Te Mahi Mara Hua Parakore, a Maori Food Sovereignty Handbook. And reading the description, it's even more based than I remember. Climate change, peak oil, food security, rampant consumerism, struggle for Maori sovereignty. These issues can seem overwhelming for those of us who are primarily focused on the day-to-day task of caring for our whānau, which means family. This book makes explicit the connection between the global and local, between the political and the personal. Jessica Hutchings explains the political implications of the decisions that we make about growing and eating kai. Kai means food. In this book, she encourages us to take control over the food security of our whānau, providing practical advice on how to grow kai in accordance with the kaupapa of Hua Parakore. So kaupapa means like the kind of like the ideas, the kind of, you know, like the agenda of Hua Parakore, inspiring us with stories of Hua Parakore heroes and reassuring us that becoming a Hua Parakore gardener is a journey that anyone can embark on. So Hua Parakore is kind of like the food sovereignty kind of thing, but yeah, it seems pretty awesome. It seems like it's mainly in English, but does have a little bit of Maori in it, but I'm sure that it'll be easy for anyone to kind of, you know, to handle. And just you can probably translate the few random words on Google Translate if you need to, but yeah,
I wanted to touch on what you said, Dan, about it's just about to leave me, but I've saved it. Trust. So this is something that a lot of people talk about when it comes to sharing food, cooking for each other, and you know, building trust in community. I think is really radical in terms of the alienation that we suffer under capitalism and power structures, right? So in terms of you know, because that's your whole project is about food and giving people food, and that's why I think that's personally why I was really excited to get you on and talk about this stuff, because it is one of those fundamental things where it's like everybody needs food. We all need to heal as a society. We all need to heal in our various communities. What's the best way we could do that? Oh, well, yeah, having an organization that's based around food and cooking for people. Like one of the like, you see examples of this all over the imperial periphery. Like, for example, in Uzbekistan, they have like massive tandoor ovens where they make like 120,000 loaves of bread a day. Do you know what I mean? And all the wheat is grown like down the fucking road, and they mill it there themselves and all this kind of stuff. And in India they have similar stuff where like I think I don't know if it's similar in terms of like connected to any kind of permaculture, but they certainly like feed people for free in massive old temples and stuff, in certain old temples in India in certain places. And that's sort of like connected to the Sikhs.
Sort of
it's
like one of the kind of the main things of their religion, that it's like, you know, they just feed anyone that comes. And like the Krishna faith as well, it's the same thing. That's Lentil as Anything, the ones in Melbourne, they were run by a Sri Lankan dude, and that was like,
that's wild. That's wild, because so you're on about Krishna, you're not on about Hare Krishna.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure what.
Yeah. Like, okay. No, fair enough. Because so I was gonna say, because obviously Hare Krishna is like the sort of white version, isn't it? But like, it's like super problematic. But I don't know. Anyway, the Hare Krishnas in Manchester, they actually do that. Dan, I don't know if you've ever been to the Hare Krishna Centre in Whalley Range, but they actually have like a free vegan feast every Sunday. So you know, it's sort of like having these different avenues where people can come together and not just eat together, but also trust together, because having someone cook for you and it be free, it sort of says to you, well, I've got nothing to gain here. Do you know what I mean? I'm not put drugs in the food so I can like put you to sleep and kidnap you. I've not like, you know, I've not like so you can die and stuff like this. It's like, no, we're actually, there's no ulterior motive here. We're here to like show love and compassion for our fellow human by doing food. And I just wonder how much of that is in your you know, ethos in the project.
I mean, the whole project only works on trust. It only works on cooperation. There's nothing else really holding it together other than the ethos and the good vibe, you see. And in that kind of respect, you know, it might be seen as quite fragile, but actually it's probably more robust than a different kind of structure. And I think kind of in our experience, you know, especially first starting as well, you know, when you kind of knew you're starting off, I mean, there's only 3 of us to begin with, there's about 70 of us now. And, you know, there's a very, very different kind of thing. And to us, the way to do things is take the first steps. Because you tend to find a lot of times that people do want to do things, and people do want to organize, and people do want something to be a bit different, but who's going to reach out first? And you can't sit there sometimes, you think, oh, you know, why don't those people ever reach out to us, or why do they never say hi? But in their heads, they're probably thinking the same thing. So Gaskell Garden's quite ballsy in that way, as in, you know, we will kind of make those interactions. And I suppose we started off working with the Somalian community in Rusholme to begin with. And again, these guys were very focused around food as well. I mean, that's the main thing about food, as you kind of mentioned before. Everyone kind of needs to have it. And if anyone says to me, oh, I don't eat food, I'm really suspicious. I mean, they're probably lying, right?
The breatharians. Have you ever heard of breatharians?
They might be lying, yeah.
It's like you go around to fucking Dracula's place with dinner and he's like, I don't eat, and then pauses, food. You know?
You know, there's something a bit shady about it, isn't there? And in terms of the human body, you know, it's a strange design, because ideally you want to eat kind of like 3 times a day, which is actually like quite a lot. So my kind of point I'm making is that the food and the sharing of food, it transcends culture, it transcends class, it transcends everything. And that's why we use it as our main community organizing tool. Because you can't really argue against it. And you're kind of starting off with the Somalian community in the first instance. You know, they had a little cafe around the corner from the garden. And so we started off cooking with them. And I think kind of like to me, it's not about doing things necessarily well. It's about doing things consistently. That's how you build the trust. I mean, obviously over the years, we've done things which are amazing, but also things could have been done better. But the fact is, you know, with a garden as your central base, you have this regularity. There's like quite seasonal regularity. And because it's not transient, the garden doesn't really move. It's like having a massive pet that you can't take with you anywhere. And that's kind of the big difference for us, because like before we started the project, you know, we were quite transient. You know, we moved around different countries and different cities. And I think to us, it was the recognition of the fact that we actually need a bit of ground in ourselves and to be in one place for a little bit. To kind of be in that place and being quite easy to find and just building up those relationships with people, it takes time. And especially when you're doing things transculturally and you know, your strength is your diversity, and that's always going to be true of
my partner's always saying, like, trust is the only currency we have as comrades.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You have to take a few chances with this, and I think that's why we like the pay-as-you-feel model as well. The pay-as-you-feel model isn't to make money. The pay-as-you-feel model is to give people the opportunity to contribute, and that's kind of where the empowerment comes in. When the food's free, it's a bit weird, isn't it? It's like, should I be taking this? Should I not be taking it? Is it of a lesser quality? Is there a hidden incentive? You know, with religious organizations, I won't talk too much about my problems with religious organizations. They're fine. They're absolutely great. But, you know, if you're offering food, then the next conversation is, you know, recruitment to a strange sect of some bizarre organization, then the food is
absolutely.
And there's a place for that. I'm not no problems with cults for my part. The purpose of this conversation,
I've got a few problems with cults, but okay.
I don't know. Regarding Dan's earlier statement on cults, you do not have to hand it to them. I signed this one.
I'm just trying to be diplomatic here. Like, you kind of think if your food's always free to you, there's something to do with your kind of self-esteem there. I mean, I used to, you know, before I first started the project, I'd nowhere to live. You know, I was sleeping in parks or sleeping in cars and things like this, and I had good friends, you know, a good family and things like that. But how many times do your friends buy you drinks at the bar, and how many times do they buy you dinner? And that feeling of not being able to contribute back in some kind of way. And you might, you know, you tidy the house every day, and you'll cook the dinner for them, and you kind of, the dynamic of it doesn't quite really feel the best dynamic you can have. So even just the ability just to kind of give a small amount back in, it means that I'm doing something good for you, but then I'm also going to show and reciprocate in some kind of way. And the same thing, me and Tom used to live in the Rockford Rising Housing Co-op up in Hume, and the same kind of model of the housing cooperatives as well, is that membership, you pay £1, and the pounds are symbolic. It's not about the money, it's about you having some kind of exchange that kind of formalizes the relationship. And that's how you kind of build that trust as well. It's not the giving, it's the giving and receiving kind of both ways, and making it transactional in that kind of way. So you definitely got people to trust you when you're bringing food. Consistency, just be consistently brilliant.
The thing you were talking about earlier about how like food, like how central food is to like building community, how good of a tool it is for building community, made me think of our last guest we had last week. We had a Cradle community on, and they were talking about how their meetings are always centered around food as well. And then just, you know, if you make good food, people will show up. And then you can have the conversation from there. So it just seems to be like a common thread that we're seeing. The food is actually like I think it's like a pretty like under like what's the word I'm looking for, Mule?
Underrated.
Underappreciated. Yeah, underrated, underappreciated a facet of like organizing.
Yeah. I think like, and across like a lot of cultures around the world as well, it's like kind of like to meet over food is like kind of like a really important thing. Like it definitely is for Maori. It's like they say, like fucking, you know, like a hui is like a term for like a meeting sort of thing over here. So they say like a hui without kai is should have been an email. It's like just this thing where it's like, you know, like if you're gonna have like a proper meeting, you're gonna sit down with someone, like it's kind of customary to like, you know, to like put on food and like, you know, to sit down over it. And I think it can also be kind of like you know, like it can be a little bit of a disarming thing. So, you know, it's like, it's not this big serious thing anymore. It's not like we're, you know, like it kind of like makes it a little bit more of a chilled kind of atmosphere where we're, you know, sitting down, we're eating, and we're going to be honest and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
It also gets over one of the biggest hurdles. Like Mark Fisher, when he's lecturing about group consciousness raising, he's just done this whole long thing about like how important group consciousness construction is. And then he's like, well, but the biggest problem is people are just tired. Like they get home from their job and they're just like,
absolutely.
I got like 16 hours until I'm back at work again, and like fucking I'm tired as shit and I got to do my dishes. And it kind of gets a laugh from the students, but he's like, no, it's true, like this is the problem, like you're just tired. And like if you're providing food, then like that really, and that's what Cradle Community is saying, right? Like it just gets around that because like you're getting dinner there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's oh, go on, Dan, sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think it's like a weird kind of repressed British thing, is not eating dinner together. It seems like everyone else does it. And I have so much more fun when I'm not in the UK, because we're all doing really fun stuff while we're eating together. You come back here, it's like, oh, we're gonna go to the pub, everyone just like scrams their dinner down before they go out, and then you're out for the night and have some beers or whatever. But yeah, I think it's like a weird British thing. So
yeah, you're right. You're actually completely right, Dan. Like the amount of times I'm just eating on my own, you know, and the times that I really enjoy food is when I'm cooking for other people. Like recently, like I started going to my partner's every Friday night, and I cook for her and her flatmate and me, and it's like it's also like a bit challenging because she's vegan too, so it's like I got to get out of my like omnivore diet and like figure out like what to cook and stuff, and it becomes like a whole ass like
meal.
Yeah.
Will you cook for me when I come visit you?
I've already cooked for you, and you know I'll cook for you again. Of course, absolutely, 1000%. So yeah, and it's like that feeling that you get, because not only is it like, okay, yeah, we're eating together and this is nice and there's trust, but there's also the like, I'm cooking for someone, and that gives me purpose. Like, you know, we all search for purpose in this life, right? Because we don't know what the fuck it is. Like, let's face it. But you know, if your purpose is getting people fed and bringing people together, that's huge. That's huge. And if you can like sort of just convince people that actually, you know, if we're looking for, I don't know, Sigma grind set, become a billionaire, pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of dreams, that's kind of rubbish compared to like bringing people together and having a lovely time and eating some delicious food. Like, you know, you don't really have a lot of friends when you're a billionaire. I know this is true because look at Elon Musk. He's desperate for friends. You know, but like you get a lot of friends by feeding people, by like coming together and like starting something like Gaskell Garden Project. So I'm just getting a little conscious because we're getting into the second hour here of having you on, and I want to make sure that you've got everything out that you want to talk about. So we've spoken already about food sovereignty, and we've spoken about the surplus food project, and we've spoken about the pay as you feel cafe and all this kind of stuff. Is there anything else that you want to mention about what you do that maybe we've not touched on yet?
I wanted to just respond back to a point that Sophie just made, if that's all right, about the idea of people being too tired to do anything when they get home from work. And we can't consider that to be a purposely made construct, because
I completely agree. Please carry on.
Tired people can't organize and can't challenge, can they? That's the trick. Yep. Keep them working, keep them tired. You come home, all you can do is have a bottle of wine, go to bed.
Well, to expand on what I was saying it from, which is Fisher's post-capitalist desire, he said like that the concept of the second shift from feminism, that women were coming home and having to do a second job because all the reproductive labor was on them. Like with the redistribution, like more of everyone is still just doing a second shift. Like it's still like there's problems with that concept, but like the point about being tired still stands. And like he also was relating this back to a personal anecdote that when he was working teaching like high school students, their HR person had told them, because they started meeting in the pub after work and chatting about how shit the work was, and they started organizing their workplace because of it. And their HR person was like, "You can't do that."
Crazy, right? And probably one last thing I'll probably add is just the next kind of thing, the next thing on our radar now is we're taking over this abandoned slip road. It's like it's 300 meters of concrete. It runs along Princess Parkway, which in Manchester is Manchester's busiest road. It's about 27,000 people pass it per day. So this year we're going big. Well, we're not messing around anymore. And like kind of for like 8 years, we've kind of been playing the slow game in terms of politics, just like just building community, just building trust, just building that power. This year seems to be the year that we're going to start executing it. And if we've got 27,000 people per day passing by this new site, then it gives us this really interesting opportunity to go a bit more macro for what we're doing. And the site's not going to be fenced off. It's actually going to be more of a park. It's going to be a permaculture park where everything's edible. And it's supposed to be a bike lane, but it's just used for fly tipping. So we want to make Manchester's most beautiful cycle lane next to Manchester's busiest road.
I know exactly where you mean. I actually cycle down there quite regularly. Yeah,
yeah, you're
exactly where you mean.
Yeah,
for sure.
Congratulations,
yeah.
you're a stakeholder in.
I'm like the only guy. I'm like literally the only guy that uses that cycle lane. Yeah,
it's horrible. Yeah, it's really horrible at the moment.
Yeah.
So that should be really interesting with that. And the idea then is that it creates resources. It's called we call it a propagation garden. So everything that we grow in there, you should be able to take cuttings and just replant to community composter. And the idea, if you actually want to green the city, if you actually want to do this, you know, we're not going to ask for permission for land. I mean, why do you have to ask for permission for land? It doesn't belong to anybody, right? And if it belongs to the council, then that by default means it belongs to me, right? Because the council are the shepherds of the resources and assets of the people. And so all the stuff that we're producing, it's just going to go everywhere now this year. So yeah, if anyone's come to do it, it's good fun.
And so I'm guessing then the little bits of stuff that I've seen on that slip road are all to do with you lot.
Yeah, because, yeah.
I actually took a video. So I hope that this is exactly that. There can't be more than one of these. So it has to be used. But I took a little video of some signs that you'd left there saying like peace and love and all this stuff. Is that used or is that?
That was actually a local resident who took it upon themselves to do that. That's very highly encouraged.
Yeah, but there's other stuff that I've seen there. There's some like containers and stuff, and
that's right.
Yeah. Okay, excellent.
I love how that happens.
So
that's
much.
amazing.
Yeah.
Someone's put up a sticker by the big Tesco near me. That's like it's a picture of a woman lying in bed looking tired, and it says like, "I don't want to go to work today. I don't want to go to work tomorrow," and then it says like, this great thing about like. Yeah, just like changing the system. And I'm just like,
great. It's
just great when you figure out like there's just people in your neighborhood doing base shit.
Yeah.
So good. Oh, that's really awesome, Dan. So yeah, I think it's good to really specify just in what way, you know, people can actually take these ideas and run with them. And we on Red Planet, we like to tell people just how you know, organizations get started, because that will hopefully inspire people to go out and do that themselves, or you know, tell people about it at least, which could be the seeds, you know, forgive the relatory pun, that fruit into you know, a new organization. Yes, very funny, Kira. Yeah, I did a joke. Well done. So
sassy today, God.
Yes, I am sassy today, and I'll remain sassy until you behave. Anyway, so is that just how you started?
What? Yeah. So sorry, I got a bit distracted.
So when you were talking before about how you just got like a pack of seeds and that grew into 30 pumpkins, is that how you started, or how did you start? What happened?
Yeah. That's how we started, really. Originally I worked for the United Nations. I kind of like, my journey's kind of like 3 times expelled from school, kind of in trouble with, you know, the court systems and things like this, and they say, get your head down, work hard, go to university, get a job. Well, that was a lie. Right, and so I actually trained as a solicitor. I actually trained in law because I was really good at it, because I didn't like policemen very much at the time, and I thought it was a good way to live a more prosperous life. And so I went to university, and then I actually went to the masters in Holland. I lived in Holland, and that's why I specialized in the LGBT plus community in Russia. So I ended up going over to Russia. I spent some time there, and I was basically just filming Nazis beating up gay people, right? And it was a pretty horrible time. And then I came back to Holland, and I was just like, right, you know, what are we going to do about this? Because it's obviously, you know, a bad thing. And the UN just looked at me and said, oh there's not much really we can do. And so in that kind of moment, I just quit. I was young, ambitious, but I was also quite annoyed about it. And so
I won't interject for long. I will just say, fuck the UN. Please carry on.
Yeah, I agree.
If just for the record, the UN is a complete lie, and it is the most dreadful place to work. So I quit and became a farmer. And unfortunately, I moved to Portugal. I was just farming land in Portugal, having a great time. You know, just herding goats, living in the forest. It was just wonderful. Unfortunately, then my best friend was then murdered in India. It's the problem. Him and his partner on the honeymoon, they were killed by Kashmirian police. And so at that point, I came back to Manchester to kind of be with people. And that's when I had the realization that, you know, I've been floating around different countries for, you know, 5-6 years, and I didn't have a community. When something bad happened, I had no one to rely on. I didn't have that, you know, there's a lack of spirituality and there's a lack of community in my life. And I came back to Manchester, and, you know, we had nothing. There was no jobs for anyone. There's no work going there. You know, people were still sleeping on sofas, had nothing to do. And so I kind of thought, well, this permaculture thing, the joke is you don't need any money to start it, right? So to make a permaculture vegetable bed, we make it out of soil, logs, twigs, leaves, grass, right? The thing these things all have in common is that they're very numerous and very cheap, yeah? And so I was actually drinking in a bar one night, and I was a bit sad, and this guy next to me at the bar said, you know, why are you looking so blue? I explained to him my story, and I said, you know, my friends died. I'm looking for a bit of land. I need a sense of purpose. Yeah, completely purposeless. And he looked at me and he said, oh, that's funny. I'm actually the chairman of an allotment site down the road. Come tomorrow, I'll give you a bit of land. And it kind of started from there. And I later found out he gave me this terrible bit of land. It was just riddled with bindweed and brambles, and no one else wanted it. I later found out that he actually thought I was just some kind of vagrant who, you know, was just going to kind of humour, and he thought I wouldn't kind of turn up and do anything. So later found that
he
out.
was bluffing.
Yeah, you're right.
You called his bluff. That's awesome.
And you're like, I'm here to take my land.
You know, and I turned up. And so what I started doing, I just started digging. I just started clearing land, start digging. And then one day someone walks by and says, what are you doing? I said, I don't know, I'm just digging. And, you know, I didn't have a job. I never knew where to live. So I start digging at 7 a.m. I keep digging till 11 p.m. And this friend said, oh, can I dig too? And then there's two of us digging.
Hell yeah, dudes rock.
We're digging. And they say, well,
this is the biggest dudes rock I've ever heard.
You know, then there was 6 of us. We didn't have a wheelbarrow or anything by this point. I saw another gardener like push a wheelbarrow down, stuff in it. I was like,
no way.
That's how you do it. You put it on wheels, all right? What we started doing, you know, we had no money. We had no money. We didn't really know what we were doing. And so what we started doing is I started selling herb cuttings. So I go to pub beer gardens, big garden centres, a pair of scissors, and we couldn't afford to buy the plants, but I could steal parts off the plants.
So
I just
That's so dope.
Yeah, with what do you call that? Propagation. Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, we run workshops on this now. So we take thousands of free cuttings, not buy the plants. Then we sit at the back of our friend's reggae night and we sell cuttings. And we say to people, look, just give us a bit of money, take as many cuttings as you like. And we made our first £40. And we were over the moon at this £40.
Oh my God.
Went down to B&Q. B&Q wheelbarrow was £37.99. We were just like, amazing. Got ourselves a wheelbarrow, and it kind of went from there, really. And because at the time, the refugee crisis kind of happened, the Syrian crisis anyway, kind of happened not soon after that. And I kind of got drawn back into politics again and drawn back into immigration activism. And they kind of start seeing, well, you know, you had all these people who were coming into Manchester who weren't allowed to work and had nothing to do. And all you could think is that these people are really valuable. Yeah, you just gone sitting around not doing anything. And I thought, well, if British people don't want to kind of like come down, hang out with me in the garden, not working, you know, I'll do it with these guys instead. And so, you know, there's a hotel, Britannia Hotel down near the airport where they put people seeking refuge when they first come arrive, put a house in circa housing. And I just went down there, spoke to a few people. The next thing you know, there's like 30 of us, all this farming. This allotment site was largely abandoned, but half it wasn't in use. And so we transformed probably about an acre of land into a functioning community garden within it was about a year and a half to kind of do that. We had big polytunnels by that point. We had ponds. We had lots of vegetable production. But most importantly, we had like a fire pits and a cooking area. It's really important. We also had loads of like bikes and just like stuffy. The kind of problem was when working people seeking refuge is that people can't travel. And so really you got to provide £5 per person for their bus fares. And this is the other fun thing, you know, you say, oh, you know, we don't want to use money, we don't want to do capitalist system, but for these guys, like, they need bus fares, man. So, you know, they need £5 a person, we can't ignore that.
Yeah.
And so I kind of looked at them and thought, oh, you guys are getting expensive, you know, we don't really have any money. So looked at them and said, well, who can cycle? Because instead of getting one bus ticket per Sunday from me, you know, if you get yourself a bike, you can go anywhere. And so we made them a deal. I said, look, if I go around and get these kind of like broken old bikes, we'll teach you how to fix them on the condition you make two. You make one for yourself, then you make one, we send them to the Calais camp, we're doing lots of Calais at the time, or just kind of anywhere else. And that's what kind of put us on the map, I think, was that kind of point where people kind of knew there was a space you go down to, no questions asked, home office doesn't know you're there. It's all hidden away. There's all this resource kind of popping up from there. You can choose what the resource is that you want to have. It kind of like catapulted from there, really. But we didn't need anything. I mean, we got the tools and seeds and stuff after we kind of started, really. All you needed was a bit of enthusiasm, I suppose. You just have to really like doing it. The kind of idea of permaculture is that if it's not supposed to feel like work, you know.
Right, it's supposed to just kind of feed into itself as
yeah. It's supposed to be enjoyable, you know, kind of doing it. So as long as like you enjoy it, then other people can't enjoy it, and it kind of just pings off in different directions kind of from there. You know, some people weren't really doing any gardening. You're just like, you know, you're all right. Some people have thought, you really don't like it here, and I feel really bad, you know, but why do you keep coming every Sunday? And they say, well, I hate gardening. I don't get my shoes dirty, but I just love, you know, being somewhere where there's people I can chat to. And you're kind of like, all right, well, what do you like doing? And they say, well, oh, I'm a painter. And I say, oh, well, get this person some paints, you know, start painting. And they say, well, I like cooking, well, cook. Or they say, I'm a lawyer. And they say, oh, great, I've got some legal trouble. Or they say, I'm a doctor. You think, oh, great, you know. So it's kind of this idea that anyone can contribute anything they like, and it's always going to be celebrated in this space. And I think by having that kind of mentality, it means, like, for example, you know, it's almost like a union in a way, you know, we're non-party political, you know, and which means you get this kind of like cross dynamic of so many different people, and they can be different and they don't have to agree with each other, but they have to cooperate with each other. I think that's the real trick to it. And I think when you're kind of using the medium of gardening, which is so natural, it's so intrinsic, and it's so kind of like harmless in a way, you know, it's very non-judgmental gardening. When you grow a plant doesn't really kind of judge you for being X, Y, and Z. It doesn't know. It's a cute little plant, you know. And there's like kind of like humbleness kind of with it. Goes. So yeah, I think we're just in the right place at the right time quite a lot of time. I think we're just getting lucky quite a lot as well. I don't know.
That is an amazing story, and there's something really quite powerful there with what you said about plants as well. I saw a talk at the Blue Dot Festival by a guy I can't remember the name of. I think his second name was Kumar, and he was talking about how in nature fruit doesn't ask you how much money you've got. It doesn't ask you what political party you've got, what you're affiliated to, or what your gender is, or what your skin color is. It just says, here's some fruit. Do you want it? And you can take it, and that's fine. And I think like having that at the core of your organization is honestly fucking awesome. And I'm going to take this opportunity to remind chat that Dan and Tommy are here for another hour, for another 50 minutes. So if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to put them in the chat. We're going to log them all, and we're going to ask them all at the question and answer session in a bit.
You don't have to hold your questions. We will hold them if you post them now.
Yeah, you can put them right in my hand.
Right. We'll answer anything.
There you go.
Anything. There we go.
So yeah, I think it's awesome that you can just get stuff started like that. Like, so that Sophie will appreciate me saying this, because Sophie loves it when I say stuff like this. This is I'm coining it now. Sophie's already coined it as mule thought, and it is. This is a part of mule thought, and that is that just like when you said that you just kind of like went to the Britannia Hotel and just was like knocking. I guess you just knocked on doors and you were just like, "Yo, do you want to just come and help me out in my garden project. Like, that is an example of like just people going in rooms and saying things, right? And I used to say this. She loves
going
it.
in rooms and saying
It's
things.
just my favorite.
But that is
the
what
core
life
of
is.
mule thought. It's so good.
That is what life is. You know, when you think about like Boris Johnson, for example, he's just a guy that went in a room and said a thing. You know what I mean? He just goes in rooms and says this stuff, and people are like, yeah, okay, I believe him. And that's it. And that's how he got to where he is. And obviously there's a lot of privilege as well, like being born into money.
I guess I love life is just going in rooms and saying things. Simultaneously, like you can't argue it's not true, but it's also got this flavor to it as a statement that's like, it's so like,
it's like a Carl Pilkington kind of thing, right?
There's
like,
no. I'm not calling it stupid. I'm calling it like
no,
it's such
a
profound
to, like,
piece of wisdom.
Yeah.
There's so much like magic mushroom flavor to this like statement. It's like I can't argue it's not true, but I can also say it can only come to you in the middle of a trip. Like,
well,
the intense
I've got no
sensation
comment.
that, like,
I've got no comment on that as to where I came to this conclusion, but it was in a room when I may or may not have been saying things. Getting back on track, it's like you've done that. What you've done is you've gone, I want the world to be a better place. Well, not even necessarily. You've been making the world a better place, and then going, well, do you know what? Yeah, as you said, like we could get a lot more people to get involved in this. And in fact, some of the most vulnerable people in society would absolutely die for this opportunity. So I'm just going to go there into that room, say this thing. And now this thing has become massive and it's huge and it's part of a really awesome you've made a huge, amazing organization out of it. And it's really, really, really cool. So in terms of what I want chat to take away from this bizarre screed, this bizarre rant that I'm going on about, you know, going into rooms and saying things, is that you could just do that as well. Like you could, if you were thinking about like, oh, my area could really do with something like the Gaskell Garden Project. Well, guess what? You could just go into some rooms and say some things, and maybe you will have an amazing situation, such as Dan and Tommy as well.
To formulate this into maybe a question, Dan and Tommy, if our chat wanted to go in rooms, say things to make a Gaskell Garden Project of their own, what rooms and what things should they go to and say?
I mean, I think without kind of making us look too piratey, I think our greatest assets was walking pubs and bars and speaking to people, and it's kind of like the spaces where people kind of felt quite comfortable, and probably where we felt quite comfortable being as well. And I think kind of like with it, it's like with the Gaskell Garden Project, I didn't really wait for people to kind of think, oh yeah, I'll do that with you. I just thought, well, if I want to do it, I'm just going to do it. And if people want to kind of join on to that, then, you know, it's really kind of welcome invitation to kind of do it. But what I don't really, maybe it's a personal attribute more than anything else, is I don't really like being idle. I'm a bit ADHD. I kind of like doing stuff, and I like patterns and I like systems, and it's all good kind of like talking about stuff, but like talking about stuff kind of like gets to the kind of point where, you know, you're so good at talking about it, you know, are you able to implement it? And with something like, you know, we started off what was called an unincorporated organization, so unincorporated community. And it basically just meant that, you know, there's nothing really binding us together apart from kind of like an agreement. You know, we'd have a constitution and we'd have a bank account. We weren't able to hold more than £5,000 in the bank account, and there's kind of limitations kind of doing it that way, but it also gave us a tremendous amount of freedom. So there was some sense of legitimacy in the first kind of instance, because we had to access like a few things in the capitalist system, you know, like a bank account, right? We can't re-operate with our bank account, or we could, but then, you know, then me and Tom are just walking around with cash, and, you know, it might be seen as a bit corrupt, or, you know, or we might lose it, something like that. I don't know. It's complicated. Then, of course, then working with people seeking refuge, you know, the kind of point with it, so we didn't see people seeking refuge, and we still don't see them as vulnerable people. We see them as viable people, and that's a difference in the way of the approach as well. You know, we didn't go down to the hotel and think, oh, you poor people, you must be having a really bad time. It was like, actually, like, we actually need help. We actually need help, and you guys are not allowed to work. And, you know, you guys are a tremendous viable asset. And this kind of comes back to the permaculture way of thinking, or a more traditional way of thinking, that everything has its value. and people have their value in that kind of way. And then kind of with that, then you need to kind of walk a fine line with things like safeguarding and things like that. You know, the project, because we have such an open door policy to membership, and we do tend to attract a very colourful array of members, and it's mostly people who kind of like can't see themselves fitting into these more kind of formalized settings. So kind of like whether it be, you can think, I'll go volunteer for a community garden, but it might be like quite a lot of rules, and you know, it might be like quite top-down kind of structure. You know, you can't have like the head gardeners or like the director, something like that. You definitely feel like when you say the word volunteer, you definitely feel like you're giving up something of yourself for something else, and that's a weird kind of dynamic. Then you kind of get people who, you know, you just don't feel comfortable in the kind of normal kind of space. It's an alternative space, you see. So we get a very colourful mix of people, but with that, you know, with that comes mental health issues. With that comes substance problems. With that comes, you know, all this kind of like multitudes of kind of problems. So in a way, we did have to have some kind of formalization in specific to safeguarding and making sure that the spaces are safe. That's a really important thing for us. I mean, in the past, we had, you know, we've had all kinds of instances where people have like schizophrenia and things like that. And people, you have to be able to like learn how to manage that. And I think that's more the challenging kind of thing, is like it's so people facing and it's so kind of like gregarious. It's a very social kind of activity that's been the learning over the past 8 years, how to navigate ourselves. And you know, it sounds funny, but to be able to organize and make any kind of systemic change or to make any kind of development of something you believe in, then you have to get that element of cooperation kind of right. I think that's the hardest bit. These days, we're actually a community interest company now. And so we have 6 directors and then probably about 50, 60 board members, which is interesting to us. So we had to like fit in with some kind of legitimate organizational structure. And the reason why we're a CIC is because with CIC is what's called an asset lock. So any assets that we have, it belongs to the project and therefore belongs to the community. It means that no individual from the project can steal those assets. And in particular, for us, it's about land. And so when dealing with the council or dealing with private landowners, no one will give us land. If, say, for example, you was a lease on the land, then tomorrow me and Tom could sell it and then go off to Mexico, yeah? But if you have this asset lock, it means that if we kind of like collapse the organization or the organization stops, then we have a named other organization where the assets automatically go to. So that's been problematic for us because we're not very good at dealing with accounts and money and things like that. A lot. We've been learning, you know, we have to like submit tax returns, which has been a big learning process for us, managing the finances.
Same.
We do it all ourselves, yeah, and these are kind of like good skills as well, because you know you got to know your enemy, don't you? I mean, it's really interesting in terms of like the organization. If you know how finances works, or if you know how these systems kind of work, then you know how to create different blueprints and different ideas to what they are. So it depends how big you want to make things, really. But it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy. Yeah, you just shove seeds in ground. It's easy.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Cool. 7
Put
seeds in ground. Walk in the room, say things.
Yep.
Chuck seeds in ground.
That's it.
The society we live in now, you go in rooms and say things. The society we want to live in, you just put seeds in the ground.
Yeah. Everyone has a wheelbarrow.
It's putting seeds in people's minds, isn't it? I mean, like you kind of think like, who is it you kind of want to work with? You don't have to work with everyone as well. I mean, I think places like you know, we work with the squats quite a lot. So you're going to the squats, you have some like-minded people in there. It can be pretty cool. But then you kind of think, well, actually, you know, this is like a local kind of project. You know, you want to have ownership to the actual community itself, and that's a tremendous big thing. So how do you get the local residents or the people around to take ownership of what the project is? And that's we run workshops on this kind of stuff, and all this comes from our own kind of personal experience of how to do that. But you can see huge big difference in results of whether people have this kind of equal access to the membership, equal access over the decision making, and also kind of like start from the ground up, really, in a way. Over the Slip Road project, for example, you know, we're doing it directly with the local residents who live in the housing estate that joins it, and we kind of started doing that through the tenants union. It's really useful. There's a campaign called Block the Block. They're trying to stop the building of student flats to overshadow the over 55s accommodation. So it's going to be, very traumatic for them. And so you kind of see what I mean. We're kind of building power. So you kind of like go along to these guys and they'll say, hey, we're going to support your thing. We're going to support your thing with our thing. Then it becomes kind of like the same thing. So you got kind of like these activists, like these union workers or these direct action people. We're like, hell, make sure these guys are fed because there's something really kind of good with it. In return, they come and guard them a few, and it's like one thing kind of leads to the other. And I think, in terms of what rooms to walk into, I'm in whatever room you want to. We love like mosques and community centers. We love community centers. The more broken down and beaten up they are, the better for us, really. And then there's a tremendous amount of people who do want to do things. It's just how you engage in them and how you gain the invitation to them. And what does your invitation look like as well? This comes back to the trust thing again, doesn't it? You're going to walk into a room and say, hey, I can make all your problems disappear. You're a bit kind of like, oh, it sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? But so how you approach it, and there's no blueprint to that. That's completely different depending on who you're speaking with and what you're doing. But there's always people in communities who would be regarded as like community leaders, I suppose, who have influence over large amounts of people. Get them on your side, and everything else falls into place afterwards.
So, God, I was going to say something just then. Oh yeah, so about the Block campaign. If anyone in chat wants to learn more about that, I actually reported on that on the Positive Leftist News that I guest hosted back in October, I think it was. I'll put the link in the chat now, but Block the Block was a really awesome campaign. And that sort of like speaks to as well. This is also something that I'm having an ADHD moment. Sorry. This is also something that I wanted to speak about earlier with you, Dan, about sort of like, because you mentioned how far do you remove yourself from capitalism? Because that has been a lot of criticism of things like communes, for example. Like if you go and you live the anarcho-communist dream, are you out there, spending all your time farming and shit like that, and you don't have any time to actually like go and help your comrades in the city anymore? You don't have any relation to the tenants unions, the trade unions, the mutual aid groups and stuff like that. You just so focused on doing your own thing. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, is that you do have, there is a great incentive to go out there and make a commune. Of course, like I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from doing that. And I think anyone who does that is exceptionally based. However, it has to be, it's exactly like Tran the Salamander says in the chat. Communes can't work without mutual aid. Like you need those connections. You cannot exist in an insular community, because all you're doing there is you're sort of perpetuating the alienation that happens in society, but doing it in a based way. I don't know. Like it's not based either way, but it is, you know what I'm trying to say basically. Yeah.
It's really interesting that you bring that up, really, because like one of the main reasons why we started Gaskell Garden Project was because of that. So I was living in these like communes and these permaculture farms, in Portugal. I moved to Wales, then worked in the Centre for Alternative Technology in Machynlleth. If anyone's ever been there, it's one of the most beautiful places in the world. But then you couldn't help get this feeling that I had I had too much energy in me. And although it was really beautiful, I really loved what we were doing, I couldn't help but feel that people in the cities needed this. And, especially back in those days as well, we had a lot of Nazis in Manchester. And this is kind of like Nick Griffin, BNP time. And these Nazis, EDL and people like this, were actually marching the streets in Manchester. But they actually got Nick Griffin, was their Nazi leader, was actually elected into the European Parliament. They're actually like legitimizing themselves. And when you kind of sat out there in your commune, you hear this Nazis march on the street in Manchester, it does make you kind of feel that like, I need to go back. So the idea of Gaskell Garden Project was trying to bring the idea of resource and beauty that you had in the countryside, but try and apply it in the city. And so that's why Gaskell Gardens is so kind of urbanized, kind of growing kind of idea. It's kind of following more like a Cuban kind of model of, small scale growing on streets. And I think Cuba produces, or I don't know if it still does, but it's something like 85% of all its own food.
Yep.
And that came out of necessity. Yeah, it came out of necessity. And it's crazy, right? It's kind of think, well, hold on a minute. It's completely possible. It's completely low tech. It's low cost. So I was really interested. Now, I admit it is 8 years down the line, and we haven't quite taken over the entirety of Greater Manchester just yet. But, you know, it's kind of there in place, you know, kind of doing it. And I think for me, for me personally, is that once I feel that I've contributed as much as I possibly can to systemic change in Manchester, that I kind of earn my right to kind of leave the city and kind of go and die happy in a nice sort of commune in paradise. But whilst I've still got energy to fight, you know, I'll stay here. But the idea eventually would be to get some land outside the city, and then, you know, in terms of creating resources, then we can start flooding the city with a huge amount of resources. That'll be pretty cool. That'll be a pretty cool thing to do in the future. But yeah, whilst you're active, be active, you know? World's not going anywhere, really.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's such an important thing to remember. It's like, yeah, you can't, like, it's all well and good to have the, you know, the revolution happen for you and your own little isolated commune, but you know, we need it in the entire world. Like, we need it everywhere.
Well, the problems are going to affect you anyway, aren't they? I mean, you can hide your little commune all you like, but the environmental change is going to get you at some point. Or what happens when people come and try and take your land? You know, you weren't organized, you weren't part of anything, you don't have those connections anymore. You know, you're vulnerable, aren't you? And it's a bit like the old saying, you know, no one's free until everyone's free, kind of thing. And that does kind of churn away at you as an activist. You know, when do you stop being an activist? You know, the answer is probably never, isn't it? You know, yeah.
Well, to riff off that, I've been taken to saying recently, free people, and I think that's what you're doing, right? Like, you're getting people who can get more people because you're freeing them.
Yes.
Just freeing up their time and resources, you know, like all that kind of stuff that they can go on to spend their own time and resources helping other people, which is pretty great.
I was quite critical of a lot of the people that I stayed with on the farms and the communes. I kind of looked at them, you know, I was a bit kind of like, you know, we kind of need you in the city, kind of thing. But then kind of later on, I kind of realized back then I was young. I was much younger than I was now. I was probably like a lot more ambitious than I am now, and I kind of realized these guys had served, you know, many years being activists, and they were tired. You know, they were burnt out. They'd actually kind of earned their time being somewhere nice. And as long as you kind of pass that knowledge and pass those skills on to other people to continue the fight, then that's when you kind of do it. You know, people get children and things. Everyone deserves a nice life, really, isn't it? You know, you can't kind of hold people hostage to it. But now as I'm getting a bit older, I'm starting to think, boy, I quite like that nice little straw bale house with the little chickens and, you know, nice relaxing life. But we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, that's awesome.
My partner was chatting with someone the other day about like retirement and pensions and that shit, and she just told them, yeah, my retirement plan is communism.
This is revolution, either successful revolution or, you know, die trying to get it. So. Well, should we start moving into the questions? You guys,
that's probably sensible.
I've got a question.
All right,
Dan.
Let's go.
Dan, or Tommy, have either of you ever played Stardew Valley?
Not a clue.
Right. Okay. No, I just wanted to check because everything that you've said just sounds like Stardew Valley, which is a game in which you literally do what user on it. It's more capitalism based. It's not as based as what user doing, but I just, because there's like a community center. Anyway, listen, it doesn't matter. That was a bit of a joke question.
Everyone not doing stuff as based as Dan and Tommy is comparing it to video games. I've got M in DM saying it's like early game Age of Empires, and I said this is while you were describing out like how the project happened, and I said like this man is living Minecraft. He's just started digging, and then you've like expanded the tech tree.
It's a wheelbarrow.
Real life Minecraft.
That's like one of the first Age of Empires unlocks, right? Like you
know, this is why Minecraft is so good, because it is real life, and everyone should just go out and do real life instead of Minecraft.
It's exactly like real life.
Let's all just go and fucking seize our own food sovereignty from the state in Minecraft.
Yes. Right, okay, actual real life questions from real life chatters. So the first question that we had is from the cheat, and he said, the cheat 1312, I think that's important to add. He says, what are some characteristics you think of when choosing a crop And what's your favorite crop? It's a double barrel question. Either of you can answer it.
That is a great question. Very disconcerting name, very untrustworthy name.
It's true.
But we'll answer your question nonetheless. Favorite was it favorite crop to grow? Was it?
Well, yeah. What's your favorite crop, and what are the characteristics you think of when choosing a crop?
Do you want to answer that, Tommy? Because
that's like perennial or annual. If it's something that's going to grow every year, year on year. So when you plant it once, you're going to get like a harvest year on year since then. That would be the most efficient to plant. And definitely the first thing I think when weighing up when to pick a crop. Definitely prefer perennials as well. And annuals are good, but usually your staples are annual.
The problem with growing annual crops is quite a lot of people do, which means it just lives for one season, you know, like a tomato, pepper, aubergine, cabbage, well, whatever. You grow it once and then you harvest it, then your beds go bare, then next year you have to resow it again. What most people do, they buy in compost, little plastic pots, you have like an indoor space. It's actually quite a lot of hard work. And people do that because a lot of the time those kind of annual crops, they're not native UK based. So, you know, like things like tomatoes and things like that, they're not really from here. But perennial crops, which means that you don't have to regrow them again. They're really fun because it means it's much less energy. You remember saying, oh, people come home from work and they're too tired to do things. You know, I agree. Yeah, you have things that grow for yourself. And if you're really interested in this kind of thing, look into natural farming. There's a book called One Straw Revolution by Fukuoka, which is the absolute Bible on it. But for us now, we've got this concept that's called the Wall of Four Seasons. So it's essentially rhubarb, which is perennial, grows back every year. We use rhubarb a lot for the cafes. We're all about rhubarb crumble. Love it. And that grows, and it grows first in the season. So it blocks out sunlight to any kind of weed seeds underneath it. Then with that, we grow raspberries. So the rhubarb grows, you harvest in the spring. The raspberries, then you harvest in the summertime. Then we have apple trees with it. So you harvest the apple trees in autumn. Then we grow what's called Jerusalem artichokes. And you harvest them in winter. So it means in one, and it forms like a block of like vegetation.
Oh yeah.
Different heights, different colors, different flowers, different dynamics. It creates biodiversity, like things live in it. It also blocks people out from like looking at you, uses wind barriers. So what we're looking for in a crop is dynamics. Yeah, how the crop interrelates to its surroundings around it. I say my favorite plant's a plant called lovage. I've actually got a tattoo over my body. Essentially, it's called wild mountain celery. It's like the original celery.
Wow.
Instead of producing those kind of like just celery's like in sticks, but that's just a trick because the capitalist is more commercially viable because it's got a longer shelf life. Originally, it's just leaves, much stronger flavor. It grows about kind of like 6 foot tall. It's known as its beneficial plant. So anything that you grow next to it grows twice as big, twice as healthy, disease resistant. It's just called a beneficial plant. And I thought it was an old wives' tale, so I thought I'd try it out. We grew an African gourd plant next to the first lovage. And the gourd vine grew about 20 meters long, producing 83 gourds. And so since then, we just grow it everywhere. These ones you can grill a garden as well because they're so tough. You just shove them into any bit of land, just leave them, and it creates an entire garden. Council doesn't know what's hit them. Council doesn't know what land belongs to them. Yeah, and
Mule's having a big thought. Hang on.
So you're telling me that I could, Kira, please don't laugh at me. I'm very smart. Right, you're telling me that I could get this
that was funny.
lovage. It's called lovage, right? That's what it's called.
Yeah,
I could get that, and I could put that anywhere that there's soil, and it would just go. It would just go ham and completely grow everywhere, all over the place. That's incredible. I fucking love that. Okay, just wanted to check. That's amazing.
Neil, do you do any gardening yourself?
I live in a flat. I live in a fucking flat. I've not got a garden.
You come and garden with us.
Yeah, I'll go. I'm gonna go and garden with Dan and Tommy now.
JMM1810 in chat was also saying rhubarb also great for nitrocycle fostering. I don't know what those words mean, but I thought you would appreciate them, Dan and Tommy.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, when you have no waste, one of the best things I was ever taught being a gardener is never remove the fertility out of your own garden. You see something like rhubarb produces these big stalks and these big leaves. The leaves we actually just mash straight back into the vegetable bed afterwards. It's a brilliant crop. Old Faithful. It's always the first sign of spring, which quite worryingly is starting to come out in like December and November times now. And rhubarb's a really good measure of environmental damage. Actually, you can see how out of sync the seasons actually are fruit plants like rhubarb. It's really, really cool. Iberian originally.
So
this is actually
go on.
I just want to ask a question now, unless yours is more relevant, but I want to, because you're talking about like seasons being, out of cycle. Global warming, it's very obviously kicking in a very real way. Have you seen any changes in like how you manage your garden?
Over the past 8 years, I mean, we take photographs, we try and document it the best you can, but when you're doing growing, when you're doing food production or growing, you become really in tune with it. And the biggest problem is fruit. So what happens is that early in the season, the fruit trees will blossom. But they're supposed to blossom at the same time that the bees and all the insects become active again. And of course, then the flowers are then pollinated and it produces fruit. But because the trees have been tricked into thinking it's spring too early. So at the moment,
Yep.
You got, I mean, it's a cold snap now, but it's like 15 degrees like the other day, and it goes down to like -3 or whatever. So in that kind of warmth, it triggers the blossoms. And what happens is then the snow and the wind comes afterwards, blows all the blossoms off before the insects have welcome pollinated. So we're seeing a sharp decline in fruit production over the years going through. And that's been counteracted with what we call a cast, right? It's CASTE, where you kind of think, oh, so mate, what happens is that the trees or the vegetables, they overproduce fruits. And people get that mistaken for thinking, oh, it's been a really good season, I've grown that really well. That's actually the tree panicking. It's trying to overproduce seeds and trying to overproduce its fruit to try and maintain its own survival. That means it's actually some kind of shock and it's some kind of danger. So you really start noticing these things. But I think really it's just the flowers and things like that. That's the biggest problem with it. Spring's a very
terrifying,
turbulent time. I mean, if we plant out our crops, I don't know, squashes, things that don't like frost, you normally plant them out kind of at the end of the first frost, kind of start of April. And then what happens is then 3 weeks later in April, you have a big snowstorm. It kills everything. And then so what do we do now?
Throws you for fucking six, like.
Yeah.
And is this is just the last thing that I wanted to talk about on this question. Rhubarb, I've heard, grows so fast. Sorry, I know. Rhubarb, I've heard, it grows so fast that you can hear it grow. Is that right?
What?
Oh,
So the thing
sounds like a muleism.
No. I know what this is. I know exactly what this is. Rhubarb only grows in the dark. So there is a production cycle some people use where they'll keep it like under artificial light for a really long time, and then it's storing up loads and loads of energy, and then they put it in the dark, and then it grows so fast you can hear it, and it sounds like wood creaking.
Right. Okay.
Which also I didn't realize this until the other day. It was just a very windy day on my street, but like you can hear like trees creak the same way as like wood creaking because they're made of wood.
That is how it works. Yeah. We're all learning stuff about nature. Sorry, go on, Dan.
If you want to come down to the garden and spend some time listening to the rhubarb with me, that'll be really welcome.
I would love, Dan. You know how much I would love to do that.
I'd love to do that. To me, that's an afternoon well spent. To me.
Yeah.
Don't go to work. Don't go to work. Come and listen to rhubarb with us.
I'm fully fucking down.
I'm gonna cry.
I mean, work is this bullshit for us, so we can
it is. Yeah,
you know what? Like we could bring a like my phone and just like chat could hear the rhubarb growing as well.
Yeah, literally, we could stream from the Gaskell Garden. What was I going to say? The next, right? Let's do another question. That was a great answer.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I actually don't know if you answered the second part of the question.
What's your favorite
what's
crop?
your favorite? Yeah, what are your favorite crops? Either of you? Did we?
Yeah, lovage.
Lovage. You talked about lovage. Tommy, did you have a favorite crop?
I'm a rhubarb man.
Okay, sweet.
Rhubarb.
Then the next question would be from Just Johnny, who asked, what plans would we need to do this ourselves? And is there any advice for finding suitable spaces in our own communities?
That's a really good question, because to do food production or a project like this, your first hurdle is land, isn't it? It's space. And it really is just take it where you can find it. I mean, we spend a lot of time kind of cycling around and trying to identify these little spots that are unused. You go try and like trace back to like whose land is it, what's kind of going on with it. And then you get into like the grey area of like which kind of players you're going to engage with. So let's say, for example, you find out it's a bit of land that belongs to the council. You might think, oh, brilliant, council not using this. But in the past, we found really amazing spots to do a gardening project, told the council about the land. The council gone, oh, we didn't know we owned that. Then the next thing you know is the council start developing on it and they said, cheers for letting us know. You'd be like, you know. But then in terms of like starting off small, in permaculture, we always say start small and effective rather than large and ineffective. And you're going to start with your street outside, you know, just build a planter box, just get something growing. As soon as just grow like a few plants, you might think, there's only like 4 cabbages, you know, what's the point? But each one of those cabbages, if you let them go to seeds, then you end up with thousands of cabbage seeds. Then you've got potentially thousands of cabbages. And so it's like these kind of small steps you can take with it. And collaborate as well. I mean, quite often you got like community centers or even like bars and pubs and things like that. They've got unused spaces where actually, you know, if you make the offer, like I want to start something, but I want to do it with your members and I want to kind of like skill share, and it's not a thing that creates profit for myself, or it's not a thing that only benefits myself. People tend to be quite receptive to it. I mean, we have to turn down quite a lot of requests for us to come and do garden projects in places. So just get involved in your community, whatever it is you like doing. Join a union. That's what I always recommend people do. Very, very diverse and dynamic spaces.
I learned of the existence of this through Manchester Tenants Union, which me and Dan are in. So there you go.
Yeah, join the union. Yeah.
Good advice.
And I think it's just like, just give it a go, isn't it? I mean, you use what you've got. You know, permaculture is all about using what you've got. And if you've only got your own house at home, you've got windowsill, don't you? So just get things thrown on the windowsill and you start learning then. Then someone will come around and be like, man, that's a great basil plant. I grow this. You start swapping your little cuttings. You start getting more kind of stuff. Allotments can be quite good. I mean, we did get evicted from our allotment eventually. Kind of going back to what Timothy, you were saying before about this kind of older generation being quite protective over their gardens. Allotments are not a peaceful place. They're more like a war zone. And we were involved in kind of a 3-year war on our allotment site until they eventually bulldozed our garden and we moved. But if you can find like a good allotment site, that's also good. That's all we started from, was an allotment as well. So just ask around. Go see your councillors, whether you like them or not. You know, they might have a bit of information for you, and definitely pop into places like religious institutions. You don't have to agree with the religion, but they are essentially like the original community centers. So if you go to like mosques or like Sikh temples and things like that, you normally receive really nicely. And also there'll be a whole like kind of wide amount of people that will be able to support you in some kind of way. So just get a bit of knowledge of your area.
Yeah, it's a broader issue I think we have with the online left. Is that there's a lot of like staunch atheism, and like actually, you know, you don't have to. It's even if you're just avoiding Christianity because that's the one you have a big problem with, like like religious institutions are community spaces, and like if you are, you know, in the UK, for example, and you're like striking churches off your list, like you keep on saying like mosques and like, you know, like these are not just community spaces, but they're community spaces of marginalized people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Well, we've got another one here from Osimo Grebe, and they want to know, what's the best or most available medium you use to fill raised garden beds on a budget? Oh, technical question here.
Oh, we could Tom, you can answer that one. That's a great question.
So this is, we've got really recent experience of doing this ourselves as well.
Nice.
I'm saying it because it's a similar technique to one that we use in the garden as well, called hugel beds or hugel culture, which means like a mound bed or like a hill bed.
Okay.
So to make up the layers at the bottom, a lot of the bottom, the initial material you put in the box, you want it to be the thickest and biggest. So we're talking logs, we're talking thick pieces of wood. You want to put that at the bottom because they're going to take the longest to decompose over time. Wood is really good at retaining water as well. So the wood at the bottom will absorb all the water that gets poured in or put into the planter box, and it'll store it at the bottom. But then building up your materials, if you actually alternate between green organic materials and brown organic materials, like brown leaves and green leaves, you're actually increasing like the reactiveness. So always make smaller layers as you're going up, because as you can imagine, different things are going to react better together rather than being like big clumps. So I'd say logs and sticks at the bottom, but then also make a mix up of green and brown organic material, and then just have the first, what's that, like 10, 15 centimeters needs to be soil. The whole plant pot doesn't need to be soil at all. You will get the disadvantages that I will give you. It will droop or drop over time as like the wood and the organic material break down. It will sink a bit, but you can just put a bit more compost on the top all the time. But that's a favorite solution so far.
See, to fill a planter box, it's actually really expensive, especially if you're buying soil from like B&Q or any of these
bags and bags.
Just bear in mind that B&Q and these places are con artists, and everything they say that you need to grow isn't actually true. It's just designed for you to keep on going back and buying more stuff. For like essentially, like you kind of need like almost like half a ton of soil to fill some of these big planter boxes. And if you're buying that individually, that's going to cost like £100 to do. So the thing is, you make your own soil. Soil is just organic material that's decomposed. So you just put all the organic material into the box, and some soil on top. But so make soil. And really, these days, making soil is probably the smartest thing you can do. We've talked a lot about producing food, but actually, we didn't actually mention the fact that it's all about soil health, isn't it? By doing it, just fill it with crap, isn't it?
And get your materials for free. Go walking around for sticks and twigs and logs and and collect dried leaves and look in everyone's green bins. Our garden's in the middle of the park, so if we ever need anything, go for a walk around the park, and we always find.
I'll tell you a funny story about making your own soil. So about 5 years ago or something, maybe longer, I've never really been much of a plant guy, but I got a plant as a present and I've had it for years and it was dying, and I thought I better start fucking looking after this. It's like a spider plant, and I always seen it my gran's, because my gran loves doing gardening and stuff. She had that stuff, blood, fish and bone. I don't know what that is. I assume it is just blood, fish and bone. And so what I thought would be smart was to put a lamb bone in my plant pot. But what happened was just a lot of maggots and flies. And that's all that happened. So little learning moment for everyone here that I've done it, so you don't have to do. Just do vegetable stuff. Don't try any of that. What I did, that was silly. I didn't think it through. So there you go. That's how that happened.
Thank you, Mule.
Yeah, you're welcome. Next question that we've got is from Harker the Storyteller. Hello, Harker. They ask, how does the collective manage safety and conflict in the organization? I think that's a good question.
That's an absolutely fantastic question. That's actually far more important than growing a plant, isn't it? You can learn how to grow a plant, but learn how to manage yourselves and your interaction. I mean, that's really been like a big learning journey, kind of over the years, actually. And the best thing to do, this is why we regard ourselves as a non-hierarchical member-led organization, because as soon as you have kind of like top-down hierarchy, you're putting yourself in a position where you have to make decisions. And when you make decisions, you can't always please everyone all the time. So you might be stuck between a rock and a hard place, really. Someone asks you to do something or wants to do something. If you say no, it's going to upset them. If you say yes, it's going to upset someone else. So how do you kind of balance that? So the best way to actually avoid conflicts in the first instance, which is always the better way to do it, is to ensure that everyone has like an equal opportunity to make these decisions. And so anything that's kind of done within the project, we can kind of say, well, that didn't go very well, but it was your decision to do that. So instead of it becoming a conflict, it's a learning process instead. I mean, in permaculture, one of the kind of catchphrases is there's no such thing as a problem, only a solution. And so if you kind of get like the good attitude kind of going with things. And so after of course we have conflicts, and of course things like do go wrong. All we have is a very vague set of principles. So as I mentioned before, you have to respect each other. You have to have good communication with each other, and everything has to be equal. And if you feel like one of those principles has been violated in some kind of way, then you're very much within your right to flag that up. And so what we then have is like a few of us, especially kind of the older members or the directors, they will be responsible for that safeguarding. And what we'd really like to first of all is have some kind of mediation. Can this be resolved kind of first and foremost? And if it can't be resolved, then we'll kind of think about the action. And conflicts kind of stem through quite like a big kind of like spectrum, really, kind of like ranging from someone that's been annoyed that, I don't know, Davey got an extra Brussels sprout to someone being quite seriously harassed, for example. And so how you kind of deal with that, the best thing to do is to deal with it with as many of you being involved in the resolution as possible, I take away the individualism of responsibility for things. You have to really make sure that the invitation to the space being safe is made at the beginning, really. Retrospective safeguarding isn't really that ideal. To try and avoid, well, we'll try and make sure that the system's set up to kind of be as beneficial to people as possible before it happens. But you just got to have a good attitude. Like we say, it has to be about cooperation. And when you kind of like really hit that home, you know, if you join a housing co-op, if you join the squat, things like that, you've got your memorandum, you got the kind of things saying, if you're going to become a member, these are the things you're going to agree to. We feel that we have very little rules compared to most places, and there's a big element of trust that we do with people. But it's a bit that kind of thing that, you know, you can self-manage. You know, if you have conflicts, you can deal with things yourself. If it's too serious, then, you know, it's a different kind of approach to things, but it's a case-by-case basis. Just be nice to each other.
That is a very good answer. Sorry, I was just on mute then. Yeah, and what we got next, this is from Goblin Hugger. They say, as far as community learning goes, do you ever have any difficulty teaching people about how plants work and how to grow food? Any advice from the teaching aspect, really?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yes, initially I'd say, because you're never going to know the name of every single plant, and there is a lot of, so the most common thing is people just come up to you with a little plant or some green leaves and say, what is it? Do you know what this is straight away? Very hard. And do you get better with being in the same garden or the same space? You become familiar, I'd say. A good thing with, just to mention permaculture again, but kind of one of the like things with permaculture, you talk about observing the space at first before you do anything at all. Just observe the space. So I think that's become a key tool for our learning in there, because at the start of any like gardening sessions or volunteer sessions, we'll go around the space with everyone and observe it, talk about what we see, what's changed, what's there that wasn't before, and make yourself, almost train yourself to see the ground differently, what's growing differently, what's growing you haven't seen before, and to actually, and this is where the group thing and having a group of you to talk between yourselves, I think always in a group environment, to bounce the questions around to different people, to make everyone taste it, make everyone smell it, make everyone look at the shape of the leaf. It's just this, yeah, great thing with having
it's really enjoyable, isn't it? I think that the in terms of like teaching or making sure that people learn, is everything has to be participatory. We're not really into PowerPoints or speeches. You know, the idea is that everyone contributes, and with that, it's an element of respect, because people who you're teaching, you have to bear in mind with teaching, there's a power dynamic there again, isn't there? Like, you have knowledge, other person doesn't, and that's quite dangerous, because actually the people that you're teaching probably know a lot of really interesting things that you don't really kind of think about or don't see from that kind of perspective. So ensuring that your sessions are very kind of two-way. You know, it's not an opportunity for you to teach, it's an opportunity for you all to co-learn together. And that's how we run the workshops and the spaces. And also, it gets you out of trouble if you don't know the name of the plant, because you're just like, well, it's not my responsibility to know the name of the plant, it's a collective.
That fucking
no, you
rocks.
fucking tell me.
I love that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is actually so based. I love that.
Nice. Okay, the next question is from Maxillaria, who's watching on YouTube, and I have been neglecting the YouTube chat, so shout out to the YouTube chat.
I'm
Hello
literally
to
the
our
only host in the
simultaneous
fucking
stream
YouTube chat.
on
I've been holding it down. What
Hi
the
everyone.
fuck?
And Maxillaria said, do they have any harvest preservation? How do they handle a large abundance of a crop?
Oh, great question. Loving the questions, guys. When we have the technical term we use, when you have too much of one thing, is called a glut. And a glut's very problematic, because you've got a very short shelf life, you know, on what you're producing. And this is the biggest problem when we talk about the surplus project. We also do what's called gleaning. So this is like an ancient right of the poor, is to go out and collect anything off the farmer's fields that they don't use, and that right still exists. But in reality, we actually speak to the farmer and we phone him and say, "Can we come on the field?" We don't go on, but technically you could. And what we're talking is like hectares and hectares of crop is going to get plowed back into the land. We should have thought about this more, actually. But so what you end up with, you know, for example, we get a phone call saying, Dan, Tom, there's 52 hectares of cabbages. Can you come and get them? And I don't know if you've ever seen 52 hectares of cabbages, but you know, it's a lot of cabbages.
That's a lot of cabbages.
You
know.
Fucking hell.
And
I've
then
never seen a single hectare of cabbages.
Oh, it's crazy, man. And kind of like
I might have
farmers-
seen half a hectare at most.
Yeah, right. Trying to vision 52, and the farmer says to us, "I can't sell these cabbages because the supermarket won't take them." And we say, "Why is that?" And he says, "Well, it's too much of a good year, and the cabbages have grown unexpectedly big." And we say, "Well, isn't that a good thing?" And he says, "Well, no, because now they don't fit inside the plastic packaging." And I said, "Well, why don't you just not put it in plastic packaging?" And he says, "Well, we're locked into a contract with the plastic packaging manufacturer, and we can't change the size. And if we default on the contract, then the financial penalty would bankrupt us." And so what you're looking at is 52 hectares. And even worse, the farmer has to now buy in 52 hectares of cabbages from another farmer who has slightly smaller cabbages, right? So in terms of like preservation, this is a huge thing in the project. So we can never have enough glass jars, right? We can never have enough glass jars. And if anyone's
Kimchi
watching this in
time.
Manchester, yeah, if you have any kind of glass jars, we always kind of need them. So like drying processes, fermentations, jams, it's kind of going back to the old ways, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having it absolutely, and these things you just learn as you go along. You know, you'll have, I don't know, we make a lot of cider, make a wine, things like that if you like to drink. With this form of preservation. So yeah, you just can't make it up as you go along with things like preservation. I mean, storing seeds is really important. If you don't want to keep on buying, saying again about living outside of the capitalist system. I mean, even like people who produce seeds for sale, they're still capitalists. They're just selling something nice. But you know, things with the seeds, so you collect them yourself. So you try them. We can't dry them in a polytunnel. Herbs, we grow a lot of herbs. We grow them too. Little tip for growing herbs: it's all about ventilation, not heat. Don't use heat to preserve them. Use ventilation. So don't dry them in direct sunlight or by like fires. You want to have this free-flowing air, kind of going through places. But people are really welcome to, like, you know, message us privately. You know, if anyone needs any help doing any kind of growing or anything like that, we're very responsive over Instagram or WhatsApp or Facebook, or I don't know what we use, whether we use internet. Yeah.
That's dope. And I think that just really goes to show as well how important it is to, you know, have something like the Gaskell Garden Project or just any kind of food power reclamation project. Because think about, so obviously chat is probably finding it really hard to visualize what 52 hectares is, but I think it's like 20 football fields or some shit. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe not 20, maybe like 5, but like it's massive. And like that amount of fucking cabbages, imagine all that going to waste. And you might not think, oh well, I want to eat cabbage, but you know, it's food for people who may not otherwise. Yeah, you know, it's food for people who may not otherwise have been able to eat, and they are prevented from eating. Yeah, because apparently the contract states that they need to be plastic wrapped. So, you know, again, more examples of capitalism just being...
According to this website that I just found, 52 hectares is actually 97 football fields.
97?
So, yeah.
That's fucking massive.
Okay, we have one final question because I'm conscious of not keeping the boys on for too long.
Yeah.
Past 11 p.m. Half a Laptop asked, any recommended sources to avoid introducing invasive earthworms, for one example? Brackets, it's come up in my area.
Ooh, okay.
Oh, right, cool. Which area of the world is that, dude?
I believe half a laptop is USA, and I want to say West Coast, but I'm not entirely certain. They're in the chat though, so they should get back to us fairly certain to specify.
The great thing about permaculture, or the kind of term that we use for this, it's like it's all about creating blueprints that apply in your specific kind of circumstances. And also it's really interesting. So if you're going to learn how to grow, buying like books on growing and things like that are only useful to a certain extent, because they don't know the specifics of where you are and what you're actually doing. So it might say like, you know, growing coriander, sandy soil, but you think, well, I don't have sandy soils, why am I reading this in a book? So this is what you were saying again about observation. First of all, was really getting to know like what you kind of got to do. And obviously you want to try and grow native things as much as possible. And that's, you know, that interlinks to a lot of things, but mostly because of your biodiversity and the nature surrounding you. It's more used to it, it's more beneficial. So like the UK bees, for example, will thrive on UK plants. If you start introducing, you know, a lot of things which aren't from this country, it creates an imbalance in the system.
Yeah.
Just be careful where you're sourcing things from as well. It's kind of like the fun thing in this kind of project where we try and take as much waste products, as much free things as possible. But you do actually have to kind of check where it comes from too. And we got offered 40 IBCs, which are like these water storage containers. We thought, brilliant, we'll make this kind of like, you know, raised garden with these things. And when we got them, we realized they'd been used to store hydrochloric acids. And we're just kind of like,
wow. Yeah.
well, I'm not really into that. So
not ideal.
Yeah, so ask questions. Always be suspicious if someone's too keen for you to take something off them. Yeah, if someone phones you up and says, "Hey, you definitely got to come and take all the stuff. It's going to be great." You know, check it out first because they're normally trying to get rid of something.
Cool. That's fantastic. So we have a last question, which isn't from the chat, but is kind of a thing we ask everyone. Our chat are kind of SWATs. They love being given homework. They really like if guests can give them like a next step to go and do something in the real world if they want to, if they've been really inspired by you talking. And I think our chat has been pretty inspired by you talking. So can you give our chat some kind of homework, a next little thing if they're interested that they can go do?
Guerrilla gardening. Guerrilla gardening.
Okay.
The guerrilla garden is going to solve your problems of not having land, because you might be thinking there, oh, cool, I really want to do some growing. I don't have anywhere to grow. There's going to take you ages. In the next couple of months, you're going to like still thinking about it. And you're not going to find a bit of land, and you're going to get a bit disempowered. You're not really going to care. And it's gone past the point to grow any seeds. So there's going to be a whole of a year. The next year, you're also not going to have land. And the next, you know, it's 5-10 years, you haven't grown anything. So just grow something and just plant it somewhere you're not supposed to.
Local bit of green grassland.
Yeah, and send us a photograph if you do it. Like if you do it somewhere, really cool. Send us a picture of it, and we'll send you pictures back of what we've done it too.
Oh, that is rad.
I'm very into that. Okay, that's very good homework. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a fantastic chat.
Before you go,
really
is there anything that you two want to plug? Any websites, any Instagrams, or anything like that?
I mean, we've got a website, which I think's pretty cool. We've got Instagram and we've got Facebook. And if people just want to just message us if you want any information about anything. I mean, we run workshops on all these kind of things, and you know, or invite us somewhere. You know, we travel. We do quite a lot of festivals during the summertime. In the UK, that is, you know, like Shambhala and up at Eden Festival in the North and things like that. So if you're UK based, there might be opportunities to meet us not in Manchester. We do move around a little bit too. So just message us and just kind of be part of it. And
Thanks. Well, thanks so much.
Yay.
All right, guys.
It's been lovely.
It's been amazing.
Tommy.
Yeah.
All right.
Really
all
great.
right. Goodbye, everybody.
See ya.
Goodbye.
Bye.
See you later.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right. That's Dan and Tommy from the Gaskell Garden Project. What a lovely episode.
God, that was so based.
It looks like next week we're going to be having, I'm not forgetting the plugs we're going to do after this, but looks like next week we're going to be having Maya, who we mentioned at the start of the show, who leaked the no-fly list. I just messaged her on Twitter while the episode was going on. As happens when people are transgender, she already followed me, so she's coming on the show. That would be pretty fucking cool. Shout out to Conrad, who does amazing hard work. You know, I sent a Twitter DM. He's actually doing all the legwork here. Speaking of Conrad and all the hard work he does, and keeping him fed with delicious gruel, we have a Patreon.
Permaculture gruel.
It's called patreon.com. It's at patreon.com/red_planet. And if you go there, Mule, you can get all sorts of tasty rewards. Not gruel like Conrad gets, but different rewards. What's the first ones that people could get?
That's right. For just £2 a month, you can get started with your support for Red Planet by becoming a Sprite. Benefits include the sacred and forbidden knowledge that you're helping the Red Planet team, early access to VODs, and access to the Red Planet Discord.
I like how
What voice
immediately
was that?
allergic.
What
Kira
was-
is like immediately allergic to Mule's podcast voice. I love that so much. Kira, what about do you
Is that an American? Are you trying to do it in
Yeah.
American?
British
Whatever you
Kira,
want.
can you tell us about the next tier of the Red Planet Patreon?
Yeah, I'd love to. All right, Goblin Mode, $10 a month. Everyone loves a goblin. We all get a little goblin mode from time to time. Huh? What's so funny? I'm doing
Go on.
I'm doing my.
Is that your
doing it.
I
podcast?
feel like my eyes are gonna pop out of my face.
Really good.
Complete your gobology by going goblin mode with everything from sprite mode. I can't. A set of cool Red Planet stickers for you to stick in legal places and only in places like that, and access to exclusive Red Planet Discord hangouts. So you get this exclusive hangouts, and then you get the stickers.
Okay.
It's awesome.
Amazing.
Tim, in your best British
top of the
person doing an American accent voice, what's the tier?
I can't even say Nottingham. Nottingham.
Nottingham. It's Nottingham.
Nottingham. Nottingham.
Yeah, that's it.
Nottingham.
You got it.
just, Yeah. I'm gonna just do it normally because I can't do any of that shit. Okay. All right, so Beast Mode, which is New Zealand $38 a month. I'm not sure how much that is in Great British pounds, American dollars, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, holy shit, are you actually gonna go Beast Mode? Well, then we can offer you all the stuff from the lower tiers and pin badges. Yep, pin badges, where your excellent new Red Planet pin badge are everywhere. It is completely cool and good to do. And yeah, this also includes Discord benefits. So you get to be a member of the Discord that we've set up recently. And yes, tangible goods. So yeah, there's more tangible goods. will come.
Incredible.
Soph, do you want to tell us about Sicko Mode?
Sure. So Sicko Mode. I'm doing Kira's British voice. For
Yes.
freedom dollars a month, or as 94 pounds sterling, you can go Sicko Mode. And if you do that, if you support us this much, we can only really reasonably offer you all the stuff from the lower tiers, plus a very special thank you message at the end of every stream, just like this. Goblin Games NZ. Oh, that's sick. That is. Thanks for supporting us and being a sicko. Thanks. Right.
Oh, it's
Sound
brilliant.
like
Oh, you're brilliant.
in Bloodborne, when you go to like a window and there's like someone inside that is like, go away.
Keep away, keep away.
That's exactly what every
briefly-
sounds like.
Just to briefly mention, the Patreon has a next goal to get an editor. If we get an editor, we're going to be able to do a lot of documentary stuff. I'm realizing that Gaskell Garden Project could be a place we go film at and do some little documentary content. So if you want to
go record
see
that
the
rhubarb.
garden, if you want to hear that rhubarb growing, get us to that next goal, and then we can get an editor, and that'll be on the way.
And
So-
I've been really meaning to visit the UK because I want to visit both of y'all. So that'd be really good.
Oh,
Aw.
Kira, that would be amazing.
That would be
Yeah.
so nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
we
come
are
on,
at-
chat. Come
We're at
on.
470 of 887.24 is the goal. It's all clearer in dollars. I know that it's all very understandable and easy in dollars.
How do
Anyway,
I change my Patreon to show dollars rather than pounds? How do I do that?
how do I go find your links, Mule? That's what I want to know.
Well, thanks for asking that, Sophie. What you do is you go to DJ Mule. That's DJ MUEL on everything other than Instagram, which is DJMU3L. B-Rat's got it all in the chat. Look at that. That's great. Apart from the most important one, which is my Patreon. I got a new video coming out
You better be right.
Very, very, very soon. Yes, be better, be right. Thank you, Kira. And it's going to be really, really good. It's about how a manga that lots of very, sort of straight, cis, white guys who are edgy and don't really go outside much think is very, very cis and het and white and edgy is actually really queer. So that's what it's about. And it's really, really good. And you're going to enjoy it. If you want to learn more, get on my Patreon, give me money. But if you want to give money to Sophie from Mars, where would I do that?
Wow. Well, you Sophie from Mars are the words that you would need to know, and you type them into all of your favorite and least favorite social media websites, either Sophie from Mars or one word, or Sophie _FRM_Mars. Just like Mule said, Patreon is the most important one. I make video essays on YouTube. I just made one about Ye and all his anti-Semitism. I'm probably going to make one about Alex Jones and his incredible brain very soon. If you want to see my videos early, you can give me $2 or more than $2 on patreon.com/Sophie from Mars, all one word. Also, just if you like for me to live, like if you just like me living and eating food, like that would be cool. Please give me money. But you know who else you should feed food to is Tim.
By hand, like literally, or even better, like a mother bird feeding a baby bird.
Yeah, if someone wants to vomit food into your mouth, Tim, where can they go online?
If you're a Tim head, or would you call them?
If you're
not
real
Tim
forehead,
heads.
yeah.
If you're a forehead.
Yeah.
Right.
Real foreheads. You can find me on YouTube and Twitch as Conquest of Dread, but Dread Conquest over on Twitter, where all the shit posting happens. Yeah, that's it. What about my good friend Kira Chats?
Well, me, you can find me at Kira Chats everywhere. And check out my socials, because that is a big part of what I'm doing. I just released a very spicy, and I cannot go into detail about what it contains, video on my socials last night. So check it out. You will be very, very happy that you did.
You will be.
So wink. So yeah, Kira Chats everywhere, and follow me on Twitter, because I'll do like a lot of announcing stuff there. So yeah.
Cool. Okay, we're gonna into nicotine. Kira, you got very excited about.
Yeah, I love nicotine. I might pop onto her stream later anyway, so be sure to stick around. She's probably doing Suck Sunday, where she watches like shitty movies and shits on them.
Incredible.
Yeah. So thank you, chat.
We're all gonna go talk serious business about how the show is made and have very hardcore discussions about which kind of gruel Conrad gets to eat from now on.
It's gonna be really
enjoy
serious.
nicotine. Okay, thanks for joining us, and I hope you all enjoy Suck Sunday with nicotine.
Enjoy. Bye.
All right, see you later.